Town Council. If we could have the roll call, please.
Mayor Browning.
Here.
Vice Mayor Gerald.
Here.
Councilman Rockwell.
Here.
And let the record reflect that Councilman Bolsonaro and Councilman Liang are not present.
Thank you. If we could stand for the pledge, remain standing for the invocation. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Heavenly Father, again, we thank you for the ability and the privilege to serve the people of Waxahachie Groves. We pray for wisdom and guidance. We pray for our community. We thank you for the rain. And for all those that are serving our country overseas, Lord, we pray protection for them. In your name we pray. Amen. Amen. All right, I will entertain a motion for the approval of the agenda. Are there any additions or anything we need to make?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to add on a D under old business. That has to do with the county donated parcels that we've been talking about. I would thank you for going over old business. We were talking about it at the last council meeting. It's the properties that I thought we had accepted from the county that we hadn't accepted, and they bid one out this month, and the bid went for $16,000 or something. So I'd like to put it, unless you've got a better location, under
No,
10.
that's fine. That's fine.
Now, you got to ask Mark once you get with,
I think Mark's got the information.
he's got the information, so we have something to talk about. Because I had looked at that too, and we had this go. Okay, that's fine with you. I'll make a motion. We got the agenda with that one addition under old
Okay,
business.
we have a motion.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for the discussion. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Do we need a roll call vote for this?
No, I think with that one.
Okay.
We'll go with the roll call.
All right. You got to keep me on track for that, because I'm used to doing it the other way.
I appreciate that.
There you go. Okay. Moving to the consent agenda. Any questions on the consent agenda? If not, I'll entertain a motion to accept.
Make a motion to accept this consent agenda.
Okay, second.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Jim. We have a motion and a second for the discussion. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Motion passes.
And just to note for the record, the administrative policy procedures for our meetings are the last item in there, so that.
Yes. So now, according to that, our meetings will be slightly different. We are going to open up, the next item we will have will be public comments. So if anybody has any public comments they want to make, that issue before was sometimes by the time we got to the public comments, it was late. And some people wanted to speak and had to leave. So we are going to have public comments at the beginning, public comments at each item. So you'll still be able to make comments, and we will also have a public comment time at the end. So anyway, I would just encourage you that you don't say the same thing 3 times. Anyway, all right. Are there any right now public comments? Anybody want to kick it off with any? If not, we're moving to presentations. We have a presentation from Waxahachie Groves Elementary School. Liz McKean, is it?
Yes.
Okay. Liz, come on up.
Okay. Do it from here? Hi, everybody. My name is Elizabeth McKean, and I'm from Waxahachie Groves Elementary School. It's right here at the end of Okeechobee. And we're having our annual fundraising carnival on May 18th from 11 a.m. to 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. I'm sorry. And we're looking for any kind of help in that way. We have a silent auction, and we have plants for sale. We're going to have water rides, bounce houses, it'll be a lot of fun. And we're also looking for members of the community to donate in any way possible. Even the smallest amount is appreciated. And if anybody knows any vendors or is a vendor or would like to participate, they're more than welcome. And we're an older school. We're trying to raise money for a shade area for our pre-K kids, because they have no shade whatsoever. And believe it or not, a 20 by 30 shade area can be really expensive, like $25,000. So we're also trying to raise money for a new sound system in our cafeteria/auditorium. So if anybody can help us, we would really appreciate it, or if you could just come and buy a hot dog or a plant. All the nurseries in Loxahatchee Groves are donating plants, and we really appreciate that. And we sell them at the carnival, and they're really a great price, and we would appreciate anybody who could come and help support us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Elizabeth. For those of you that have not been there, hey, cheap date. Take your wife, go get a hot dog, go get a drink. There's a silent auction. You bid on about 50 things. Maybe you walk out with something, maybe you don't, but bid on them.
Sure.
And I have done my time on the dunk tank. I think I'm a little old for that, but we might volunteer Ryan since he's not here. And I have spent my time in the jail there. My problem is I very seldom get deposited out. I have to put my time in. But anyway, Ron, you want to say something about that?
Like she said, a lot of the nursery owners, they put quite a bit into it with donations of plants and stuff. And then there's businesses, not only in Loxahatchee, but Royal Palm Beach business parks and all over that donate things for the auction. They have an auction, and the auction is pretty good. You might get a water softener filter system that's worth $500. You might pay $50, $75 for it. It just depends on who wants it and how high they bid for it. So it's a good thing. It's very enjoyable, and the kids and the teachers appreciate it. Every year that they've had their carnival since we become a town, before we became a town, the county commission would donate a check to them to support the carnival. Since we became a town, we've been donating $500 for this carnival in support of the school. And I'd like to make a motion tonight that we do the same thing. I believe we've got a little over $4,000 in our fund, and so I'd like to make a motion that we donate a check for $500, Loxahatchee Grove Elementary School carnival.
We did that already,
What's that?
a couple months ago.
We made, I don't think it was for this.
Not for this year.
Okay.
I second the motion.
Is that what you're saying? What was it, Virginia?
No, I think we're maybe thinking of the landowners who made a donation.
We donated
Oh, wait, we have a motion and a second. Further discussion? Again, I've stated, and I know we've got it in the budget, but I do want to be careful. Loxahatchee Groves is unique because it is the only school that's right within our boundaries, and it does service our kids. Anyway, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? I have no comment cards by the public. All in favor?
Roll call?
Roll call.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor, did you,
Before you do roll
under further discussion, did you indicate by that comment that maybe it should be more than $500?
No.
Okay, I'm just checking.
No, my concern, and it just goes back to the thing that each one of us have the ability to donate whatever we want. We have different things, and for us to donate tax money of taxpayers, Loxahatchee Groves, it is just. I want to see our people support it, but that's just something that I want to be careful about. So anyway, all right, we have a motion and a second. Roll call.
Vice Mayor Terrell,
Yes.
Councilman Rackett,
Yes.
and Mayor Brown.
Yes. All right, so it passes. All right, moving to
Thank you
item.
so very, very much. That's a real help to us. You have no idea. Thank you.
Okay, as long as it keeps me off the dunk tank. All right.
You're awesome.
The drunk tank?
4B, we have Terry Morton. Come on up.
This is green money time.
Look at that.
Thank you for inviting me here, and especially for putting it in front of the agenda, not the end. And I am Terry Moore. I'm a partner with the firm of Miller Hunt & Minor, which is the town's independent auditing firm. And I'll just briefly go over your comprehensive annual report with you and hit the highlights, and then open it up to any questions you might have. And just the title tells you a lot about it. It is a comprehensive annual financial report, and that is above and beyond what state statute requires and what most local governments require. It's just an added level of information that you make available to people. And then the report also goes out to a group of people where it goes out to 3 different people and they grade the report with a checklist. And then at the end of the task, they give you a certificate saying that the legal will present a report. And in the past, you've gotten that certificate and we expect that you will again. And one of the requirements of that report is it has to be timely. It has to be 6 months before it's actually done. And staff for prior to the year, you need to get an extension because there's an issue. But this year it was filed timely without any extensions. And so the first section of the report, I'll walk you quickly through the table of contents. The first section is the introductory section, and that just gives you looking background information and the elected officials and stuff like that. Then after that is the financial section, and the first part there is our auditor's report. And then there's the MD&A, and if somebody really wants to know what's going on in the town, if you just read the MD&A and statistical information, it's fairly plain English, you can understand it, it's not written in accounting terminology. And after that, there's just the detailed statements and the footnotes, and then there's the statistical section that I mentioned, and then there's our last 2 auditor's reports. And so jumping ahead to page 1 and 2, which is our opinion, and it is an unqualified, or what's commonly called a quick clean opinion, which means the statements are fairly presented in accordance with accounting principles. And the main thing that means is it's just that they're clear, and if someone picks up these statements, they can compare them to somebody else's and know that you're looking at apples and apples. And then jumping ahead to page 14.
Terry, do you know what page it is in our package? Mark, is that like 80 something?
Okay, he's now around 74, 213.
Yeah.
That's what the management discussion analysis starts. The MDA starts on 74, 213.
You're on page 14 now?
Yeah, but it's 87 to 213.
Yeah, he just went to 14, so the mayor's right, 87 to 213.
Thank you.
And the biggest number there in your balance sheet is that you do have 1.3 million of unassigned fund balance. That's money that you're carrying ahead to fund future year's operations. And then just jumping ahead to page 16 is your sanitation fund. Again, you've got 31,000 available there. And last year you had a surplus of 35,000 in your sanitation fund. And then the last 2 reports, which I'll just go over with you rather than trying to tell you what page you're on, is the first one is our report on internal controls and compliance with laws and regulations. And in that report, we had no comments, so there were no material weaknesses in internal control or any significant non-compliance with laws and regulations. And then the last report we do is the management letter. And about 4 of the 5 pages of our management letter is just about the Auditor General making us put in there saying we had no comments. And the other pages, we did have one comment this year relating to the gas tax proceeds. And
Would you like, please? Thanks.
okay. We did have one comment relating to the gas tax proceeds as far as if there was some question of if all the expenditures were in accordance with state statute or not. And staff has researched that, and they're either going to reimburse the money or make sure they were in accordance with state statute. And then the only other comment we had in the management letter was that one of your departments was $600 over budget, and the Auditor General makes us put that in there. We normally wouldn't put that in there. And other than that, I think you should be proud. It's a very clean audit, it's timely done, and open up to any questions you might have.
All right, any questions by council? And nothing here from the public? All right, thank you very much. Do we need a motion or anything to accept? Yeah, Ron?
Terry, the only question I have is, I'd about the gas tax thing. In other words, y'all found that there might be, in other words, I noticed it says possible.
Yeah, the management had told us they weren't sure.
Okay, that's what I was getting at. In other words, you guys didn't find a problem with it, but management, just to cover ourselves, we presented it to you. So if there is a problem later on, we can straighten it out.
Yes.
Okay. Do we need a motion to accept, or is this just a presentation? Correct?
I think we can forego the motion on that.
Okay. All right, Terry, thank you very much. All right, moving to,
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
some comments about our annual reporting. But first of all, this year we were not able to get this report to our finance committee before it had to be issued. We need to make sure we schedule that well in advance, so they see it, say, in March or wherever time frame, so we don't do it after the fact. The other thing is there's a section of our financial annual report that's done by the town management. I'd like to make sure that also is submitted to the town council. It can be done, I guess, through the submission to the finance committee for review, but I would like to see the highlights that they issue given to town council well in advance so we can look at it and maybe have some input on it if there's anything we want to add to it or comment on it before we finalize it. One other thing is that we have been consistent and I think delinquent in the fact that we don't recognize in our annual report the finance committee's contribution to our annual financial picture. And we give credit to all those that are involved, but we forget them. I think we need to write them up in the future as to they're an integral part of, and credit, if we're doing well, they should be given credit for it. We're not been doing poorly, so I don't expect that they'd be in that situation, but if we are doing poorly, they get credit for that too. But we've not been given any credit as recognizing, except through the council, but not officially in the annual reporting. So I'd like to see that happen in the future.
okay, thank you, Jim. All right, moving to, speaking of the Financial and Audit Committee, Virginia, come on up. Item 5A.
Mr. Mayor, before Virginia gives us a report, we are hearing the March 2013 report or the February as our agenda suggested.
March, February and March financials, we're just doing a brief summary, very brief February and March financials.
Did we all already approve the February financials last month?
Yes, we did.
Okay, so we're looking at
That's at the time.
approve the March financial. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Just in my notes, Virginia Standish for the FAAC committee, reporting from our April 23rd, 2013 meeting. February and March financials were approved 4-0. Bank balance is approximately $3,223,000. And just a quick recap, the town has received 61.2% of the budgeted annual general fund revenue, and its general fund expenditures were 64.9% of amount budgeted, which left through March 31st a general fund expenditure deficit expenditures exceeded revenue, resulting in a deficit of $56,827. Also, Terry Morton did present to us the management letter to the committee. Mr. Chu had insisted on it the month prior, so we did hear the management letter and some comments made. I'm just keeping it short tonight because he was already here. Thank you.
Okay, Virginia, thank you very much. And appreciate the job your committee is doing.
Thank you.
I make a motion we approve the March 2013 financials.
Okay, I have a motion to approve the March financial. Second?
Second.
Second by Ron. Further discussion? All in favor, signify by roll call.
Roll call.
Councilman Brackett,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Zero,
Yes.
Mayor Brown.
Yes.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, I have one other question, please, relative to financials. We got a mailing from the tax collector's office recently. It commented on they had a surplus of fees collected, and they gave back some, from what I read. Don't know if that really meant gave back to anybody like us, but if there's some formula or something that's being followed, maybe we got $1.50. But I'd like to know if we got anything back.
Okay, I'll check on that.
Because supposedly they got more money in the fees that they charge than they needed, which is nice to know of a county agency. It's unusual.
It normally doesn't happen, they normally adjust everything, but yeah, I think we spent it all. Okay, moving to, we have nothing on 6, 7, or 8, moving to administrative update. Mark.
Thank you, Your Honor. First item I have is a tentative budget date. Braden's going to hand these out. This is, what we wanted to do is give you a tentative timetable. I think for the most part it will be the timetable that we work with, but just wanted to let you have it. There might be some minor changes that occur, but basically, just wanted you to have it. We can talk about it at a future meeting after you've had a chance to peruse it and take a look at it. Secondly, I wanted to let you know that at the last meeting on April 16th, there was some discussion relative to the possibility of attempting to get a signal at the intersection of Southern and D Road, being that the engineers for the state are working on the PG&E study, the pond siting. I did speak with Tomas Ruiz, who is one of the lead engineers of Stantec, working with FDOT, and I indicated to him the town's concern and our concern that we believe that a signal is warranted at that intersection. So he was going to note it for the record. There is the final pond meeting tomorrow, and I'm going to be attending that in Fort Lauderdale and then pressing forward and making that case to see what the town can do to assist that. It may mean a traffic study. It may be something as simple as a resolution, but what I want to do is find out more specifically what the town can do at this point in time to make sure that they look at that intersection and address it. There was a lot of support for that at the last meeting, so I want to make you aware of that. And that does lead me into the next issue, which is the pond update. They've had 3 meetings now. They have a very sophisticated matrix system in which they rank all the sites. And tomorrow is going to be the finale where they look at this ranking, and I guess they memorialize the sites. They've been very busy. They've been out talking to a number of property owners. Right now, it appears that the 2 sites they're leaning toward in the town is on the Palm Beach State College property, down near Southern. And then the other side appears to be not directly behind Grove Medical Plaza, but a little further up on F Road. And that's one that they're considering a joint use agreement with the town. So the FDOT is very flexible on those joint use agreements. There may be something, in the past, they have given municipalities the property in question and just turn it over as long as they can work and do the joint maintenance. So it could be a win-win situation for the town, and I'll be finding more out about that. And probably if we do have our meeting on May 21st, I'll be able to give you a final update and be able to tell you for certain what appears to be happening with that. Wanted to also call your attention, we received in the office this last week, Representative Mark Pafford is having a meeting, what he calls a town hall meeting on Thursday, May 30th, at Kaiser University, 2085 Vista Parkway, West Palm Beach. I believe he's having a meeting to more or less give feedback relative to the 213 legislative session. And in addition, he has contacted Ms. Eichhorn, and I believe it's the next meeting he's looking to come to? June 4th. He also wants to come and do a presentation to the town council relative to all the significant things that have happened during the 2013 legislative session. So look forward to that. Wanted to let you know, I did indicate in your weekly significant issues email that I send you, we have shortlisted the engineers for town engineer, traffic engineering, and surveying. On Thursday, the selection committee will be hearing all the presentations, and hopefully by the end of the day we'll be in a position to make some recommendations to you. And I would like to bring those recommendations to you on May 21st so that we continue to move forward. We have a number of things that we've been juggling in the air now between the ITB and the selection of engineers so that we can get moving on a number of these projects. So I wanted to call your attention, that's going to be happening on Thursday. There is one issue that I want to make you aware of. I did speak with the chairman of the P&Z board to let him know that I was going to be bringing this up. At our last meeting, Mr. Benz from Land Design South and Mr. Lalonde, as you know, they're doing that commercial piece on that, the southeast quadrant of that site where Palm Beach State College would also be located. And the PUD was before the Planning and Zoning Board at its April meeting, on April 11th. The same meeting also, Marty Carey was there also representing Solar Sport, and they were doing their rezoning of the PUD at the same time. One of the members made a motion, and the motion passed by a 3-2 vote to table the matter over my objections, and I'll tell you my objections. I did caution the Planning and Zoning Board because of the fact that, number one, the motion was requesting that town council entertain getting a traffic consultant, not really sure what they were looking for, if they were looking for a civil engineer or a traffic engineering firm, to review the preliminary site plan to, number one, look at the issue of the larger parking spaces and things like that Mr. Lalonde and Mr. Benz were looking for a waiver from. And I indicated to the P&Z board that due to where we were with our RFQ with town engineers, essentially what they were doing is they were almost sentencing the petitioner to a 2-month delay. Not only that, but there is the issue by them taking that motion, they are pretty much tying your hands, or at least putting you in a position of having to incur additional costs by a motion like that. So these things were discussed, and as I said, it did pass by a 3-2 vote. The chairman was not in favor of it, and as I indicated to him, I was going to bring it to your attention just to make you aware of the fact that at the next Planning and Zoning Board meeting, I'm going to ask them to take it off the table, and I'm going to try to at least talk to them that, you know, their job as an advisory board is to vote things up and down and not table matters indefinitely, and, you know, obviously they can make a recommendation to the council as far as anything they want, but to make it a motion to try to make it a directive to the council that they go ahead and they incur expenses, I think is a little bit out of bounds. And I think the chairman is also in agreement, so we're going to have that discussion, but I just wanted to make you aware of that issue. The final issue I'm bringing towards you, and again, this is going to be for a further discussion. I'm not looking for town council direction tonight, but I wanted to let you know that over the last couple of months, town management has been talking with various members of council relative to getting the newsletter going again. And you all have several different opinions, from going to a full-blown newsletter to trying to do something via the internet or the website. One of the reasons why we originally had when we started, we did 2 newsletters back to back. You may remember the first one was over $1,000 and the second one was almost $1,000. So we were almost at $2,000, and at that point you kind of said, well, let's scale that back a little bit. But we really haven't done much since then. I know there is a desire to reach the residents, to try to give them timely information. So what I would like to do is, under our new business at our meeting, if it's the 21st or either the first meeting in June, kind of have this discussion with the full council and kind of get your direction as to how you want town management to proceed, and what kind of forum, what kind of news. If that's okay, I'll go ahead and I'll schedule that.
Are you all right with that?
Well, is there any, you're deferring the discussion because you expect a lot of various input positions based on the communications you already had?
Well, that plus, as you know, and the Mayor and I talked about this, I try not to bring you, I try to bring you informational items. I'm not looking for you to take votes on something tonight because you don't have anything to react to other than what I'm telling you. So that's the only reason why I said the discussion would be deferred to the next available meeting.
Well, I'm just trying not to delay if there's any effort we can move forward on. I don't know that anybody in the council would be objective to an email distribution for those that we know have an email. And finding out the email might be a step that we take to find out how many emails we can ascertain before we, you know, and add that to the input to how we're going to communicate with the town. I would maybe support an idea just sending out let's say a postcard to everybody in the community, and just says if you have an email and you'd like to receive a town newsletter by email, notify us of your email. Now, if you get only 10% of people responding, which may be the case, then we won't be able to be successful in an arena. But if you get a lot of them, possibly we could have at least, I mean, I'd love to see half the people have an email address, and then we could send it out to them, and over time, maybe encourage others to either give us our email address or possibly they obtain them. I have a feeling most everybody has an email address somewhere in their house. So if we could maybe agree just to send out a postcard, just a postcard, and send it to every addressee in the community. Just ask them if they want to have town letter by email, and provide email to you. We have a very limited email distribution with our system today, which you had to go on the website and actually had to ask for certain things to be sent to you. It's not a town newsletter, but it's other documentation. We had to provide that, ask for it. We had 3 different things, I think, as I recall. You have to give your email 3 different times. But I'd like to, if council would agree, we send out just a postcard and say, we're looking at this. If you can tell us what your email is, send it back. If that's agreeable to council members, then we can maybe get something in a couple of weeks packages.
Okay. Anyone can add that, Ron?
I agree with Jim. One thing I thought about, we just came through a campaign back in March, and we got a lot of information on cards, and I believe that to send those cards and stuff out, it was like a couple $100, maybe even less. Some people got better deals than others. When you talk about $1,000 or more for a newsletter, when we could put what we've accomplished and what we're looking to accomplish in 2013 on a card and send it out, I would like that idea. If we send out a postcard, I would like to do a couple of things. First of all, ask the people if they want us to send out a newsletter periodically. Ask them if once or twice a year. For me, the ideal time would be in once a year would be ideal in January. First of all, to give the residents an update of what we did for 2012, for example, and what we expect to do for 2013, and then any input that we have to put in that newsletter. And that would cover both years. But if the people want a newsletter, then we can afford to give them a newsletter. Whatever it costs. If the people feel like they can get their information on a card, like our campaign cards and stuff, then we can save money. But we need to let them know approximately how much it costs, and let the people of Loxahatchee decide whether they want to spend $1,000 or whether they want to spend a couple hundred, or whether they don't want to spend anything at all and just go email. So that's, if we send out a card, I'd like to at least put some type of information on it to tell them what we're trying to do and what we did at the same time.
And I think that's good. I think that if we put on there to see if they would like to have, maybe twice a year, spring and fall or something like that, just to put it out there and let people know what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, Ron, my comment was not either or. It would be a combination of media type of thing. If people want an email, a newsletter, that would be the question. If they would like a newsletter provided on email, then it would be kind of part of that same question. But give us your email address and send it. We'll use that as part of the mechanism to distribute whatever feedback gives us.
Okay.
So we'll send that out, and then we'll defer the discussion until a reasonable time we get the feedback, and then we'll come back and talk. Okay.
Make a motion for that?
Yeah, I think we should probably have a motion for that.
All right. Someone want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion that we authorize the town management, direct the town management, send out a postcard relative to what we discussed here in the newsletter, information that we're trying to gather, and to have the results of that given back to us and give them some idea of when you'd like to have it back so that we can incorporate it into the meeting.
Okay. Second, Russ?
Second.
Okay. Any other discussion by the council? I've got one comment card. Marcia?
Hi, Marcia Newell, 3508 C Road. You have an expert in the room about email addresses. Marge should be able to tell you what % of email addresses you can, obtain. She was busily trying to get people at the election. There's apparently several email venues out here about missing dogs, found goats, horses, etc., running down the road. So there should be plenty of, opportunity to get those email addresses. The once a year idea of the postcard is ridiculous because you guys don't know from 1 month to the next what you're going to approve and what you're not going to approve. So telling me that you're going to do X, Y, and Z next year, and then you put A, B, C, D, E, F, etc. on top of it, you're not giving me the information. So if you're going to do a newsletter, you need to do what in the world is going on at the moment. I mean, this once a year would just, you might as well forget it. Thanks.
Thank you, Marcia.
All right. Comment, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah.
Some of those email lists may be subject to privacy issues, and I'd be concerned about getting somebody's email list to reuse for our purposes if they were not granting us. So if we go by asking people to use their emails and they tell us this is my email, I feel a little better about them and noticing that. We'll have to tell them at the time too that your email is public record, and we want to make sure that they're aware of that. So that may be a restriction. Some people want to get an email because they don't want their email address public record. But some of us have given our email addresses out for specific purposes, and those lists are not necessarily for public record.
Okay. All right. So we have a motion and a second. Roll call vote.
Councilman Rocket?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Jarrell?
Yes.
And Mayor Brown?
Yes.
That concludes my report.
Okay. Then we're moving to old business. First one up, 10A, is Mr. Rocket on the speed bumps.
Well, I'll bring it up, and what my intent was to raise the issue so we actually conclude it. I don't know if we conclude it tonight because we listened to representatives, but we talked about it, we know it's coming. If we were to get bids back next month, first of the month, and we want to put some road improvements into the Compton, Bryan, etc., we don't know what we want to do with speed humps. So we've talked about the speed hump or speed tables that are out to our west. I think they're a great example of what we can adopt. Various council members at different times have commented about how far apart they are or should be. We've got potentially Z Road to be discussed as far as what they do on Okeechobee South. So I think it's time for us to make a determination as to what we would adopt as the speed table device. And to me, there's no better way to figure out what we might like is to take an example. We've got the example to our west. Is that Sycamore? And if you take Sycamore off of Seminole Pratt, those are even a little better than the ones that are on 44th, which is close to my home. And if we were to actually look at them, try them, I asked the council before to take all your vehicles out there, because if it's a truck, if it's, we don't have any lowriders on the council, but if you have any kind of a vehicle, I had an issue with the speed humps we adopted in the community, because when it came to using a nursery vehicle, a nursery truck, it was a 5-mile-an-hour speed hump, not a 30-mile-an-hour speed hump. So, and we've had other conversations about that, and various people at that provided their input. But I think it's time for us to decide, so if we put it as a decision on our next agenda to decide if that's acceptable. I mean, there's things like distance between. I'll tell you that, for example, on 44th, the county put in 2 speed humps on a half-mile segment. It doesn't go along canals. But in talking to people on Bryan, they would like speed humps added. So my suggestion is you could very well take it. It's about a half-mile segment of road. That you come in about 500 feet, you come in both ends about 500 feet, you have 2 humps. That's 1,000 feet, approximately a little more than 1,000 feet between them. That would give you an idea. Or you could come in 600 feet and it would make it more of 1,000 feet. So it's something along the lines of almost double what we have now, and a table which would make it much easier to drive over and still maintain a limit on the speed limit. So next meeting, we can actually vote on it rather than just discuss it. I would like to do that.
Okay.
If it's okay with the council that we actually take it as a voting item, or we don't think it's ready to do that, but I think we're getting close to what we need to know.
Rob, comments?
I definitely think we need to come up with what we're gonna do. We've been talking about it for a long time. I don't know about next council meeting. What I'd like to see management do is the Sycamore, West Sycamore off Seminole Pratt are speed tables, and they're the best that we've got in the area. I'd like to find out, and we can find out through Indian Trail, I'd like to find out who did those. I'd like to find out how many contractors, if we got anywhere from 1 to a half a dozen contractors that can put those speed tables in, and they have to be notified that they're going to be putting them in on top of the OJM. Now, with the OJM, and I'm not the professional, so they would have to tell us, the OJM, we may have to let the road harden for a short period of time before they put those speed tables in. I've been told that they can't do it in the process when they're laying the road out. But I don't have a problem with giving it, I would think a few weeks. I'm not talking about 6 months to a year for the road to harden, because we need to get the speed tables down as quick as possible. So those are some things we need to ask them. I would like to get some, they can give us estimates on how much that speed table costs. Okay, we don't need an estimate on how much to do every speed table in Loxahatchee Groves that we've already got down. All we need to do is how much they charge per speed table, if we get a discount if they do over a certain amount. Those are things that I would like to have brought back to the council before we decide. And at the same time, I would like for us to be able to, I'm thinking this might fall underneath our procurement policy, depending on how much we did at a certain time. And with Blakeney Canal coming up, and if we resurface Bryan and Marcel and Compton, there's not going to be that many speed tables on, especially if we don't put them 500 feet apart. So I think we could do that without going out for bid. I just think we need to have those contractors. We need to know who they are. We definitely need the one that did Sycamore, and we need to know how much it costs per speed table. And that'll give the council some kind of idea of what we're jumping into. But no, the sooner we can get the ownership of the roads and stuff, I agree with Jim for the simple fact that we've got them 500 feet apart. We're punishing our residents with what we've got. We did it for a reason, but the truth of the matter is, if we want to keep people out of the canals and we want to stop speeders, then we give our residents a decent road, and people that want to use that road, then we pay the PBSO extra to write tickets and stop it. And that's the only way you're going to stop certain people from speed. It's going to have to cost them in the pocket.
Just a comment, Your Honor. I understand council's desire to move quickly on this. One thing that I would just offer as a potential is, with the speed hump issue, as Vice Mayor Darrell indicated, we're going to be taking over the roads from the district. The other issues with speed humps are the type of hump that's being utilized, the distance issues. And one of the things that we could do is, we're very close to having our traffic engineering on board. One of the things we could do, and I don't think it would be a very expensive study, is to have them go out, look at field conditions, look at the situation. I know I've been told that the district used a study based upon the Institute of Traffic Engineers. But I think, since we're going to be, there's going to be maintenance issues, there's going to be a whole bevy of issues that I think it would behoove us to at least, possibly have a study done and make sure that we get a recommendation for the future template that the town would seek to use. And I think we can, like I said, I think we can have our engineers do that very cheaply. It might slow us down a little bit in terms of making a decision, but if just some food for thought, you might want to consider that.
Okay. And my concerns is I want to make sure we've got an engineer that signs off. Because we do not want to create a safety hazard. One of the issues, and I know some humps are worse than others. On D Road, I watch people on a fairly regular basis, going 45 miles an hour down the road, and it doesn't seem like it slows them down at all. I don't want to see them jump that up to 60 when, wow, this is even smoother. You know, now we can go 60 miles an hour, and because it endangers people pulling out of their driveways. You know, I would love to say, yeah, we'll just put the deputies out there and write the tickets, but in reality, you know, that's hard to do. So, you know, I just want to be careful that we do that. I agree, some of the bumps are very rough. You know, mine's smoothed out this last month because I put new shocks on my truck. So, you know, after 220,000 miles, I needed them. But anyway, it was amazing how much smoother that I go over them. But again, I don't go over them over 30 miles an hour, and even then at 30 miles an hour, some of them are a little drastic. But anyway, I agree with Mark. I think we need to get an engineer to look at it, you know, and to take into consideration our location with the canal and everything else. Ron?
One other comment is, when you check those speed tables out on Sycamore, check with Indian Trail and find out what engineer signed off on them, because that could save us some money. If one engineer is going to sign off on them, then I don't think our engineering company would have problems.
Okay, we've got several comment cards. Marcia?
One other on that.
Okay, go ahead, Jim.
Have Aaron come up if you want, but it was, I believe, 44th was done by county engineers. Even so, different locations right up toward north and west will get a little different, but in all cases, it was an engineer involved as far as I know. So I don't know if I want to wait for another engineer to have to take a look at that. We can't get the information about who the engineers were, what municipality put the speed humps in. You know, and lastly is, when we had dirt roads, we had no speed humps and the speed was unlimited. We added OJIM, we've said that before. Roads that are OJIM were safer without speed humps than the dirt roads were. So we added a level of safety because you could stop. So, you know, just because we have OJIM in doesn't mean we've enhanced or made the level of reliability greater or the degree of safety less. I think we've enhanced it.
Well, and I would probably debate you that. Based on what happened on B Road when the road wall was put down. Because I talked to several residents that were on B Road and there were no speed humps. It was a product similar in some ways to OJIM that they put down, and it lasted just a few weeks before it began to come apart. But during those few weeks, there were people running 70 miles an hour. Just like there were in the past a few really smart individuals that ran 70 miles an hour on our dirt roads. So, you know, I mean, you can't legislate stupidity, but, you know, at the same time, you know, I don't want somebody pulling out of their driveway and get hit by somebody coming down that road at 70 miles an hour, because, man, it's smooth now, you know, and I'm looking ahead and I don't see the deputy. So, you know what, I'm going to put the hammer down and away I go, and you know, what the heck about your dog or your kids or the guy that's riding his bike down the road, or you happen to pull out of your driveway. So just want to be careful in it. Marcia?
Marcia Newell, 3508 C Road. As you know, the speed bumps and I don't get along. I was told that the reason we had the speed bumps is because some engineer from God knows where said we had to have them and they had to be X number of paces apart and yada, yada, yada. Now I'm hearing that that maybe was not the truth.
No, that was, at that time when the Water Control Board came up with that, that was determined to be that what we needed instead of guardrails.
The speed bumps that we have, where they put them on top of the OJIM, gives you not just one bump to go over. It gives you, speaking from experience, because every speed bump is extremely painful for me. You hit it with your front wheels to get onto the speed bump, and you're hitting a place that the car jerks. Then you go up over the bump. Now you've got your back tires hitting that, and then your front tires go off the other end, and your back tires are up in the air again. So there's approximately 6 times that you are jarred on every speed bump. When we have dirt roads, D road bothers me not at all because it's a vibration. It's not a drop or a bump. So therefore, it doesn't affect my back. But these speed bumps are killing me. And if anybody knows an ADA attorney, call me, because seriously, it's killing me. Those speed bumps are killing me, and it's not fair that I have to be in pain every time I come to my house or from my house. You know, I've spoken to you guys before, and I spoke to the drainage district, and nobody gives it. But they'll hear me someday. All right, think about the speed bump,
Thank you, Marcia.
seriously.
Penny, Ricky?
Massaging what brains she has.
Penny Riccio, 12795 71st Place North in the acreage. I sat on the Indian Trail board, so when the speed humps were put in on 44th Street, that was Indian Trail. Our people did that. On Sycamore West, Tony Mazzalotti took it out of his discretionary fund and had the county put it in at our request. Those are exceptionally well done. On Orange Boulevard, again, the county put those in, but they reduced the speed limit from 45 down to 40, and your speed hump is at 30 miles an hour, and it's smooth, and the fire department, even though they weren't crazy about it, signed off on it because the fire trucks in an emergency or an ambulance in an emergency can navigate them very well. The ones that you have along 162nd here between Okeechobee and Sycamore, that was Bill Godhope when he was president of Indian Trail, and actually those are horrendous. So,
5 mile.
yeah, 5 mile an hour speed humps, they were really bad. So, but we have cut down basically to 0 accidents with those speed humps on Orange. So they were well utilized.
Okay, thank you. John Ryan?
John Ryan, 3508 A Road. The district, in selecting the height and spacing of the speed humps, relied on a combination of the Institute of Traffic Engineers' recommendations, the design of the humps and the spacing. The spacing actually began at 260 feet, and one of the outer limits was 500 feet. And we adjusted that so that they were hopefully at a minimum of 500 feet. And in some cases, when we adjusted for driveways, it was a little different from that. We, of course, selected that study and along with the recommendation of our engineers, primarily because of the proximity of the canals next to our roads. I mean, we looked at the liability issues and we said, this gives us an answer if there's an accident and a lawsuit. Now, when we quit claiming the roads to the town has the liability issues, and you make your own determination there. We do have, both of us enjoy a degree of sovereign immunity, but the exposure to accidents is there, and safety is a major concern. And I have researched, as most people can do on the web, litigation associated with speed humps. And some communities have brought up the same issue that Marcia did about ADA, concern for people that have infirmities, and the speed humps affect them differently. However, the courts that have considered this have so far looked at it and said the overall public safety and the public good is what counts. And if someone has a medical condition, they just have to adjust it, maybe very slow speeds or whatever they have to do. It's not something where you design the speed humps for the most extreme cases. And you recognize that people are at a disadvantage because of physical infirmities, but that's part of being a public body. I mean, you can't please everybody.
Thank you, John. Okay. All right, so you're going to come back with that. We don't need to go to that, so, all right.
Can we get it scheduled for a month now?
We can start that. Like I said, we're looking to come back to you on the 21st with our engineers. If you approve the selection committee's choices, we can immediately turn around and try to get a contract going, so that, yeah, it might be doable within a month to get the study started, if that's within your time frame.
And the other thing we might want to look at is find out if there's a procedure that we could reduce what we already have.
Right.
In other words, to go along there and grind the top up or whatever, to make it less severe or whatever. Because I know there's not, I've watched them put them in, and it was not real consistent. You know, they had a template, but we all know some are more severe than others. You know, some you go over 30 miles an hour and it's not bad. Yeah, and it depends again on the type of truck and everything else. You know, and the type of vehicle. We've got one that doesn't go over them very well at all, and others that do. So, but some are more severe than others. I mean, they're not all real uniform. So, you know, if we're going to do something like that, let's look into what it's going to take to repair, and it's going to have to be after the town takes over the roads. You know, and if we're going to do that, then look at some way of doing that. Could probably use gas tax money to take care of those issues, since it'll be town roads at that time. So, all right, so you're going to come back with that. All right, moving to 10B. Ron? This is Compton.
I talked with Mark today, and it seems like the invitation to bid will be finalized here shortly. And matter of fact, we've got some people here tonight, but one of the lowest bids for cutting and hauling vegetation was CNC Loader. And we talked about cleaning the drainage ditch on Compton Road. Before we resurface Compton, Bryan, or Marcella, or before we resurface Compton, we need to clean out the drainage ditch. Now, we're in the process of getting that signed from the Water Control District over to the town. The drainage ditch is included in that right-of-way. So the drainage ditch will come along with the road. What I'd like to see is when we finalize the invitation to bid, I would like to get direct town management to get our lowest bidder on that project. I believe Choquette, his price was $3.50 a cubic yard. Now, for him to cut and clear that drainage ditch for $3.50 a cubic yard, that's unbelievable. When it happens, I'll believe it. But so I would like to at least have the intentions that when we finalize the invitation to bid, that's the first thing we jump on, is to get that drainage ditch cleared. And the other thing is, when we do Collecting Canal Road, as far as putting Ojum down, we need to do the same thing the Water Control District did before they put Ojum on the other 4 roads. They had a local contractor go out with the Water Control District, and the difference with us is they would probably be going out with our utilities officer. But we need to find out where we need to either repair culverts or where we need to replace culverts before the Ojum goes down, so that we have good drainage off that road. When you ride some of these roads out here that was just done, they had a certain amount of culverts that they were going to replace or add, and when it came down to the final, because we got in a hurry, probably almost 50% of those culverts was taken out of the picture. So that's why we have water standing in certain locations. That's why we don't have the proper drainage coming off these new roads that we should. So as a town, I would hope that when we put a new road down, that we've got good drainage to go along with it. And that's why we need to start collecting canal. We don't know when it's going to get done, but we know it's going to get done in the future. And that will be determined when we have an engineer come on board. I would like to see us start looking for drainage locations and culverts right now with a local contractor, and start preparing for it instead of waiting until the last minute. So that's where I stand on the drainage ditch for Compton Road. It needs to be done, and there's a couple problems that go along with that, but the ditch has to be cleared out. Supposedly there's a culvert that's in line. I don't know if the house is foreclosed, if anybody's living in it, but there's one culvert that has to be replaced at a residence. Supposedly Harold Murphy has a culvert that he'll give to us free. All we have to do is get it installed. there was a time the Water Control District said that they would install it as long as we furnished the culvert. And that would be something we'd have to talk with the Water Control District about. The other thing is we definitely need a culvert replaced at Compton and F Road, going into the F Road Canal. That's obvious. So those are things that we need to try and do before the hurricane hits us at its worst time. Thank you.
Okay, any comments, Jim? Mark, comments? Okay, all right. So you're gonna follow up on, what do we need to do? Do we need to, you're looking for RFPs also on this?
Well, I believe tonight now, go ahead, Mark.
I think what the Vice Mayor is requesting is, with the ITB tonight, we'll have if you select a low bidder, we'll have somebody on board.
That will be
And
able
then the question is, once we get a contract set for you to approve, then we can go and move forward with that service. So I guess it's just, probably just bring it back one more time under old business when we're ready to go, and then, unless you want to make a motion tonight, I don't say that sounds like where we're going.
All right.
And I understand where Mark's coming from, where we come back with a contract and we approve the contract. But I also spoke to legal. To me, we're fighting a time schedule here. June starts the hurricane season. Okay, if we come up with a low bidder for the contract, I would like to see, while we're waiting on this contract, that low bidder go out and do the job. Okay, and then when the contracts are finalized by legal and stuff, if we've got any problems with the contract, then we'll straighten that out then. The price is cut and dry, $3.50 per cubic yard. So that's not going to change in the contract. So I personally would like, we've got May, we're just breaking into May right now. Hurricane season comes in June. And we've been getting more rain than supposedly we got last year. Now, we may have a bad rainy season, and we may have a hurricane or two. So to me, if we could jump on this and then get started with it, that's what I would like to see. So I'll make a motion that after we do the invitation to bid, after we finalize it, while we're waiting on the contract to be finalized, that we go ahead and let the lowest bidder go ahead and work on that drainage ditch.
Okay.
What I was going to say is, we're going to have a contract for it May 21st. And what we could attempt to do, if that pleases the Vice Mayor, is that night also have whatever document was received or something on this project before you that same evening. That way we have the paperwork and we get it done, and maybe if he's selected at that time, in between time, if there's any inspections that he does to give us, make sure that it's in line with his contract or extra work, that could all be put together to bring to you at the 21st.
Yeah, and let me say this, and it's supplemental to what Mike is saying. I think we could do it because once we have a contract in place, pretty much what you're doing is you're putting these low bidders on a continuing services contract, if you will, to do these services on a continuous basis. Generally, the way you do that is you bring, as you have a separate job, you bring, if it's a specialty job like this one, you can bring an authorization to proceed. So what we could do is, we could probably have the contract and the authorization to proceed kind of concurrently.
Yeah, the next meeting.
Yeah, so would you be all right with that?
Yeah, that sounds good to me. The other thing I'd like to see, if we're going to have that ready for the 21st, I would like to have a cost estimate on replacing the 2 culverts. In other words, so we can finalize everything. And I don't think, we get estimates for free, and I know the culverts would fall under our procurement policy. So let's have everything together on the 21st so that we can get started on it.
Well, let me second the motion for discussion. If I may, we were talking about, I thought, in coordinating with the transfer from the Water Control District of the Compton easement before we did any work on Compton. Is that going to happen could it happen by the next Water Control District meeting?
It's not going to happen by the 13th. That's their next meeting. So we're not going to have the document for them to approve. So that aspect of it is not going to work. But maybe we can work with the district on getting some sort of
permit from them to do the work while we're doing the transfer while it's still in their name. We've done that in the past to do work, District Road, so that would be part of what we look at the next couple of weeks to make it, to bring the project up, but you're not gonna have to quick claim deed in the next meeting.
Unless I'm misunderstanding the vice mayor, I think where he's going is he's talking more about the cleanup of the ditch as opposed to doing a resurfacing of Compton, which I would definitely say, yes, we've talked about getting ownership of the road before we do any kind of resurfacing. Now, whether you can split those or not, I don't know. That's something that's your call. So I think that might correct my parent.
The drainage ditch has to come first, and the resurfacing hopefully will come in the near future for 3 roads, for Compton, Marcel, and Bryan Road.
My comment was relative to, I thought I heard Vice Mayor say that the easement came including the drainage.
Got to verify that as well. I
And
don't know that
if it did, then we would get both things together. And when we get the transfer, and then either one of the projects were together, then follow. I just thought it came with the drainage easement.
No, I'll clarify that. The deal with the resurfacing is, I've got some prices here tonight, and I went out to Jupiter Farms, where they've done this. They call it micro surfacing. It's over Oger. Okay, it makes it look like a brand new road, and they guarantee it for so long, and it's supposed to last for 8 to 10 years. But I think we're going to have to go out for RFPs because our problem is when we put Compton, Marcella, and Bryan together, it's going to be over our procurement cost. So we'll put it out for RFPs. And one thing I recommended to Marcus when we go out for RFPs, that we need to do 2 bid classifications. We need to do it from somebody that does asphalt and somebody that does the micro surfacing over the Ogen. Clyde Sykes on Bryan's Road got an estimate from Trinity Asphalt to do Bryan's Road. The estimate was $56,000. We got a price on micro surfacing, and it was just a little over $25,100 and something. So there's a big difference there. So, and these 3 roads would be a good test thing for us finding out how well this micro surfacing holds up. Because and it wouldn't be that costly. If it holds up as good as the Ogen, when we did North Neck Road to begin with, the whole picture of using Ogen was to find out how long it was going to last as we had to do repairs and stuff. And Bryan's Road, even though it's probably in the worst shape, Bryan's Road has been down for over 10 years. So it's lasted, and it's been abused by different streets and stuff. So no, the Ogen, and if I'm correct, the district supposedly will finish up F Road and Lake Canal Southern in July. They gave the contractor an extension because they want to be finished with the project before they finish the road. So we could be talking as late as July to get that Ogen and get the 3 roads done. The contractor also said that if he can do all 3 roads, that he could come in, I'm thinking he could probably come in just about any time, bring his plant and everything, and do the 3 roads, but he would have to do all 3 roads at the same time to make it worth his while. And to be fair, we would have to go out for prices with the RFP because it's going to shoot us over the $25,000 mark.
I'm not sure if I've answered my question. Does the easement from water control district include a drainage easement or just a road easement? Do we know?
That, I had a conversation with Mary Viator's office last week. We've got to confirm that. The only way to confirm that is to know how wide the easements are on, or the dedications are on those things. Is that something they had said they were going to double check? I don't know that it does.
They said they were going to double check now, but there's board members on the water control that said that Compton Road, the drainage ditch was included. So
I'll figure that out then.
we got a supervisor in the back that says it's included.
Well, that's my question, was if it's included and we get something from the water control district, then we've got something to cover as well.
Yeah.
If it's not included, then we have a separate project that doesn't have an easement or anything associated with it. We have to consider that a little differently. That's what I'm saying. It'd be great if it's included, and and we get that transfer, which everybody's moving to do, and then we could certainly act quickly with a contract that we already have in the next meeting that says this is a service we can call on somebody to do, we can get that done. So I don't think we're gonna have the easement transfer though.
Well, my point was that we're not gonna have the easement transfer, we're gonna have the ITV, assuming you move forward tonight, and the contract and the authority to proceed, we can have that before you'll have transfer from the district. However, I'm sure we can talk with the district council and administrator about getting some sort of permit like we did when we did the gaps, the areas of the Heights on North Road, to work in their easement, while we're in that transition phase, it's ultimately going to come to us. Anyway, so if that's all that's holding up the project, I'm sure we can get something from the district. And I was assuming that to be the case when I was saying we could move forward swiftly. But it turns out it's not within an easement, we're just going to have to report that back to the 21st and come up with a solution on how to resolve that issue.
Okay.
Would it be appropriate to hold up on the motion at this point, and wait till next meeting, or if the vice mayor wants to do so?
Well, I don't know if Ron's going to withdraw his motion.
No, I'll withdraw my motion for the simple fact that I believe staff has direction, and I think he has a consensus of the council to go ahead and prep for the 21st, and be prepared on the 21st to solve the problem, or start on the problem.
That sounds good.
Okay, Frank, you want to call it?
I guess I officially withdraw my second.
Frank Channel on Marcelo Boulevard. Just to clarify, on Marcelo Boulevard, there's 30 feet on each side, 60 feet encompassing the total road and the ditch. And I believe it's the same thing on Concord Road. That's something that is on everyone's survey through there, and we have the county do an actual survey of the whole road. And it is, most people on the north side own the ditch and the road, and on the south side owns the majority of it. On Bryan Road, I honestly don't know, because a survey would probably have to be done, and that's where your town engineer would come in and he can go and read the people's individual surveys and take a look at. Right now on Bryan Road, there is no real drainage ditch that runs through the whole road. There's bits and pieces as you go through the road, and sometimes on the south side, sometimes on the north side. And there is outfalls at Folsom Road, there is an outfall at Effort, but it doesn't go all the way through. But I do know for a fact that Marcelo Boulevard does have 60 feet, which does include the drainage ditch and the road.
Thank you, Frank.
Mr. Mayor, if I could just say something, we've talked about this, we talked about last meeting. Bryan Road is different because we don't have any paperwork, any survey. The expectations on getting the work done on Bryan have to be different than Compton and Marcelo.
Right.
I mean, we may try to price it as one project. I'm not sure if we can hold the price as long as it takes to get paperwork. It will take some time to put things in place for Bryan such that they are Compton and Marcelo. And while we're working on it, I just want to temper your expectations on Bryan Road. I know that's a road that's got to be done quickly, and we understand that, but we've got to do it in a sequence.
At the same time, Bryan is different than the others because it was never, the right-of-way was never given to the county or to the district. So I think that is probably going to be the template that we're going to use for the rest of the town roads and Lock Section Road.
Exactly right.
To where are we going to go through all the stuff and require all the surveys and the legal and get everybody to sign off, or are we going to go in and just improve the roads and the drainage? Because I'm afraid we're going to end up with a cost just trying to get the road greater than doing the work. And I think we've got a legal precedent. These roads have been open for 20, 30 years. I don't think you're going to get any complaints of somebody doing that work and repairing their roads. And if we do, then that's when you put up the red flag and say, okay, we stop on this road and go to something else. But I think this is going to be the template, and I think we need to proceed with caution and try to do it as cheaply as we can. And at the same time, I still think there are products as we go beyond these roads. These roads already have the ocean. My concern is what's under the ocean. As far as, because that's one of the things with ocean. We really didn't put a lot of money into substrate. I mean, much more than what we did on the dirt roads. I think there's some other products out there that we can look at that might be cheaper, that might do the job, and, you know, rather than do them all in OJEM. I think all the main roads that are going to get speed humps need to be OJEM. We need to have it all consistent. Some of the others, I think we need to look at another product, maybe, if it'll work. So anyway, Ron.
Just one comment there. Penny worked on Indian Trail Board, and Indian Trail tried all kinds of different types of material on their roads. And the final thing that they agreed upon, I believe recently, was OJEM. They tried concrete shavings, concrete chippings, asphalt shavings. They tried all kinds of stuff, and because it was a cheaper price. And some stuff they even got for free. But when it was over and done with, after all their research and wasted time, they felt like the OJEM was the best and the toughest. And it seemed like Jupiter Farms, they were another one that tried different types of road material, but they ended up now with OJEM, now with micro surfacing done by the OJEM people. The foundation of our roads is 57 rock and good road rock material, base rock. And that was done on every road in Loxahatchee except for a couple that we missed by Commissioner Massalotti. He agreed to bring it up to 6 inches of good road rock based material. So we've got a good foundation on our roads. So that stuff is behind us. Mike, the one question I was going to have for you tonight is we're supposed to have a public right-of-way easement form, and we've got a copy. We had a copy in our last council meeting agenda package. Okay, we were supposed to have those forms available for the residents on Bryan's Road, and we were supposed to try and get a letter out to the residents. Now, we've got residents on Bryan's Road that basically can pull the association or that homeowners together, and they can get the forms filled out, and they can get that done. So I want to know if that letter is ready to be passed out to the people, and if we have to send them a letter explaining to them what we want, when is that letter going to be available? Because when we do these roads, we need to do all three of them together, Bryan's, Compton's, and Marcel. That's where we get the cheapest price, and that's where we get the most for our bucks. Now, this right-of-way easement form is supposed to be close to the same thing that they use for Marcella and Compton. And so that's the way we talked about it, and that's the way we want it, the simplest route that we can take. And because we can't survey every road and engineer every road in Loxahatchee. When you talk about the district roads, or soon to be the town roads, the main roads, that's a different story. That's a major thoroughfare as far as Loxahatchee is concerned. But we do have this letter or this form ready to give to the residents.
The form is ready, but we had talked about the last meeting, if you're going to do it the way the county did it, the county did surveys. We talked about the description of the south 30 feet or the north 30 feet, and that's what we talked about the last meeting. If we're not going to do that, then I need to go back and determine the other way to confirm it, because we have to be clear where the road is and where it isn't. So I understand there's some hesitation to that, but to answer your question, the form that the county used is prepared. We can model it on that. But each one of those residents along Compton and Marcella have a specific legal what they dedicated, and support for them as important to us. And so, I talked with Mark and Braden about getting that list of addresses together for the people along Bryan. We have a letter we can use to send them, and make sure they're understood. This is where we're going. We get them to consent to dedication, subject to us giving us an appropriate description of the area. Where the footprint is of the road now, I think we can model something to move forward. But that's some logistics, and it hasn't been done since the last meeting.
And to me, I think that would be this concept of the template. In other words, to come in there, it's like sometimes on a job, you can't fix what's already been done. So you have to take what's there right now and move forward and make the best out of it. So maybe what the letter needs to state is, you know, we're taking what is there right now, and this is what we're considering to be this right of way. And 10 or 15 feet, whatever we need on each side to do that. And then we've got a starting point. Because as soon as we bring engineering in and all that, all of a sudden you're taking the yard away from this guy and adding the, you know, taking 5 feet away from this guy and adding 5 feet to this guy, and it's going to be a mess. So I think somehow it needs to be worded to where, you know, we're gonna take the roadway as it is right now.
Well, we're not gonna take it.
No, but I mean, you know, consider the roadway as it is right now.
That's the same thing as the statute.
And use that for the footprint.
But I do agree with Mike on the timing and the logistics, because the thing is, you want to do the letter on the right timing. If you send the letter out too quickly, I think there's going to be an expectation by some of those folks that the work is going to happen quickly, and we may not be ready to move as fast as that letter going out and getting the approval. And then we'll have some unhappy residents. So.
Well, put in the letter that you expect something to happen in 6 months. I mean, I wouldn't hold the letter back because I'm concerned about people getting concerned. They might think something's going to happen next week. Tell them it's not going to happen next week. But I agree with what Dave said, agree with what Ron said. And I think I hear what you said, and we didn't give you that direction last meeting, so now it sounds like we're giving you a little twist different, which is what Dave just said. Find what is already there in legal descriptions. Take that as the path, as the template, as the footprint. Can you, I heard you say something about this now. Is that something you would agree that we can move forward in that?
I'm gonna go back and look and see. I mean, it sounds like, at the very least, a survey of the road's gonna need to be done, whether we do individual legal descriptions for each different dedication, but that's like what the district did when they filed the maps in the county, is a survey of the road. We're gonna have to at least do something at that stage and get a surveyor on board. You know, so I'll work with Mark and we'll come up with a solution for Brian. It's just, it's different in Compton and Marcella. Once we get the quick claim from Compton and Marcella from the district, because it was dedicated to the public, they just accepted it, we should be able to go on those two. But Brian, we make it, you have to give us a little bit more time so we do it right.
Do we know what happened on Compton, for example? Did they just go with legal description? They actually did the survey?
Each individual property owner signed the dedication. They had an individual legal description for that portion of their property that they were dedicating to the public. Each one of them, they stacked that fifth. Each one of them, and that's how the county got it, got the road, and confirmed that's where the ozone was going to go.
Each person signed a document that.
Correct. With a legal description for their specific properties, so there's no doubt about it. We talked about the last meeting about addressing or making sure ULDCs and the comp plan had provisions in it that didn't penalize people when they either provided a public easement, confirmed the public easement, or confirmed the public dedication through documentation. They wouldn't be penalized for acreage calculations or setbacks because of where the road was. And that's part of what you directed us to either confirm we had or make sure we did to the ULDC. So there are a lot of moving parts to this that we discussed at the last meeting.
So I'm not sure I've got clear. We can go with the legal description even though it's that thick a package, or you say no?
That's what I interpreted your direction was the last meeting. We're going to do it like Compton and Marcella. And once we get the survey around, we're going to get an estimate of what that was going to cost the town to do. And then put that in each individual dedication, match it up with the owners, and get them to sign, just like the county got them to sign for Compton and Marcella. That's how I understood the direction was for the last meeting, and that's why we're moving quickly to get the surveyor and engineer in place so we can get it done and get it done right now.
All right, I'm having a senior moment, I think. Let me understand. You have to do a survey. We're talking Brian.
Right?
All right, so Brian, you will have a survey done. What I heard Dave was saying, we don't want to say we just sliced somebody's 5 foot off here and added 5 foot over here. That's a survey.
Well, I don't know how it's slicing. A survey is going to exactly describe what portion of somebody's property or what portion of the area is covered by the paved road and or the ditch.
Okay,
We're not
that's fine.
slicing.
What's already there, you're feeding back to the residents. This is a description of the roadway that you have been using that has been there,
Right?
and that's how it relates to your property. That's the
Correct.
piece that the legal description goes along with that.
Uh-huh.
So all you're doing is stating in a legal way, officially, what is, where the road is.
Correct.
There, okay.
And that sounds to me like what we want to do.
That's, yes, that was what we recommended, and that's what you all directed us to do at the last meeting.
All right, is that, and I'm gonna let each one of the council chime in on that, because now I think I understand what you're saying, and now I think I agree with what you're saying. But you're also saying that takes a while.
Well, we have to get the engineer in place, we have to get the surveyor in place, we have to get the estimate of how much that work is gonna cost. Then we bring it back to you and say, this is what it's gonna cost to do that. And then in the meantime, if the cost comes back high, we have to calculate it as maybe a plan B on doing it, differently, that would be less formal and less, less formal.
Okay, well, can you proceed with a letter with that approach, explain to people, and just make sure they don't expect it's gonna happen next week? Because I don't wanna get a call the week after that says, you guys are starting on this next week, huh? Because I got a letter in the mail. I've tried to, when I'm getting questions, inform folks as best I can that there's a process in place. There's no reluctance to do the work. There's a process that takes time. So if we can say in a letter that this is something we're looking to get done this year, then that would be, to me, a reasonable expectation on the council part, as well as now you're telling the folks that that's what we're looking at doing. If that would work with what you're talking about, then it sounds to me like the letter is almost ready, and that the form is effectively almost ready.
The form was at the last meeting.
So we can, in a couple weeks, whatever, maybe you give us an update next meeting, but can you send this all out by next meeting?
I don't know if we can send it all out by next meeting, but we'll do what we can on it. I've got other pressing matters I've been working on with some deadlines coming up, but I work with the town, not town related.
I guess I would like to just ask if you would have a plan, dates in place by next meeting of when you will issue the letter, when you will proceed with the steps that we need to proceed with, a plan.
What time?
And I don't want the plan to start in September. Okay? That's my feeling. Council has to attend.
Okay, Ron.
We're working on a situation on 24 Circle North right now, okay? And one thing that's helping us work with the residents is one resident has taken the leadership role and has gotten surveys from everybody. I think there's about 16 people that live on this street. She has gotten the most recent surveys from every landowner except for 2 or 3 maybe. 3 at the most, 1, except for 1. Now, the way I'm looking at it is we need, with the consensus of the board tonight, I'd like to get some blank letters, not letters, but forms, okay? And I want to touch base with some of the residents on Bryan's Road with forms. And just verbally, I'm going to communicate with them that if they can come up with their most recent survey. I realize we need a surveyor to come on board with an engineer, but more so a surveyor than an engineer with this situation, except when we start putting speed humps in. So no matter what, it's going to save the town a lot of money if they've got the most recent surveys already available for that surveyor to look at. So I'd like to have a consensus tonight that I have free reign of.
Ron, I don't know that it would save us money. Because what happens, as soon as every landowner comes in with their survey, now somebody's got to coordinate all those surveys, and if there's discrepancies, if we're talking about bringing in a surveyor and shooting the points on the road and say, this is the road as it exists today, and this is where we're going for, I think that's going to be the cheapest and the quickest. As soon as we try to get all of those different surveys in line, somebody's got to put it into the computer and determine which one's which, and all of a sudden this one's a little farther out than that one, than this one, and they've been done all by different surveyors at different times, and I think we're going to open up the proverbial can of worms. So if the question of the surveyor is just to establish where the road is today, and say this is where we're establishing the road today, will you sign off on it? And they say yes, we go for it. I'm afraid if we put the rest of it in there, we're really going to have problems. That's my thought.
So you want a timeline by the next meeting?
Okay. I think you're heard from all three of us. Now, is it clear?
That's
mine. No, we'll bring something, we'll bring a plan back that you can chew on and confirm direction at the last.
And again, my concern is this is going to be the template, so we're going to be going forward on other roads in the same way. And I firmly believe in the KISS formula, keep it simple.
You got the last dance?
Yeah. Okay. Keep us simple. All right. Moving to, Ron withdrew his motion on the last one, so we're moving to NC. And Ron? This is macro.
That was just back to micro service, and me and George Perez, we went over to Jupiter Farms, and we looked at the projects, the roads they've done in Jupiter Farms. The people over in Jupiter Farms, the Water Control District, are very happy with the service. So whenever we go out for RFPs for these roads, and because we want to try and combine all three of them, cut the cost down, I think we need to ask for two quotes. One on how much it would cost to asphalt it, and the other one would be how much it would cost to microsurface over the ocean. And that way, these three roads here, Bryant's Road has probably traveled more than Compton's Road because so many people use it for a cut through. These three roads, when you're talking about $24,000–$25,000 to do each road, that's a small price to pay to find out how well it's going to hold up. And then the contractor, they'll guarantee it like we were told the ozone should last us 8 to 10 years. After 8 years, we need to respray it. But 10 years is a long time for a road to hold up before we have to resurface it or major repairs.
Years for more stuff.
So that's it for that.
All right, any comments, Jim?
No, I think it's a great idea, especially your comment before about keeping up to date on what's coming down the pipe, and we'd always be working in that regard.
Good deal. George Perez.
George Perez, 1544 D Road. I did want to comment on this microsurfacing. I've been doing this for a long time, and when I heard about this product, we had to go see it. And it's been around for years, but it's only been around in the northern states. Like Ron said, we took a look at one of the jobs, and it looks great. What I would like to suggest is that when we do put this invitation up to bid out for this surfacing, include the drainage work on it. The same contractor did all your drainage work for the ocean. So that could happen at the same time. It'd probably save you some money as well. Do the clearing of the ditch, or whatever clearing, whatever work you're going to do first, like we're doing on Compton Road initially, but put it out to bid so we can get some solid numbers. And obviously it's going to have to be for the resurfacing. There is one drawback to the microsurfacing. On our roads, it's going to be perfect. You can't use it on parking lots, and when tires are going to turn on it, it will scuff the asphalt. There were certain areas that were scuffed up because the homeowners were turning into the driveways, but our roads are perfect for it, and I highly recommend it.
Thank you, George. All right. So we're going to look into that. One of the things I'd like to keep in mind, though, I know in the future we're going to bring in the OJM contractor to do collecting canal. We need to coordinate along that same time, and I'm looking down the road, with the culverts that need to be replaced, because while he's out here doing that major thing, if we're going to have some culverts put through those letter roads, the ones that we're getting from the Water Control Board, we need to get that done at that time so he's here, because a patch like that would cost a lot if he had to just come down and patch over a culvert. So I'm just saying that if we can possibly coordinate it, we're already talking about a couple that need to be done across the roads, 24 and Compton and some of the others. So we need to get a list of those so we know what it's going to cost and try to incorporate them while he's here. It is right.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like for us to follow the same procedure we did with the other roads that we owed you. And we've got a couple contractors in this room tonight, but George worked with the OGM engineers, he worked with the Water Control District, and the goal is we have to have the drainage done before they start to come in to do the OGM. In other words, we can't work it in with them. It slows them down. They move too quick. The drainage and stuff, when we get our engineer and our surveyors and stuff, the drainage we have to do prior. And then when it comes time to do the OGM, all they have to do is come in and do the OGM. So the drainage has to be done ahead of time.
And I agree with you, Ron, but I'm not talking about those issues. I'm talking about where the OGMs are running down.
Okay.
On those OGM roads that we are now going to take over from the Water Control District, there are some of those that need culverts under. So if we can coordinate those patches, because they are going to be patches of the existing OGM, with the contractor being there, that's all I just said.
Now that's I understand, Dave. Now that's something that's very important. And what I'd like to see is, that's back to, George had a list, the Water Control District had a list of the culverts they were supposed to replace or fix. And like I said, they reduced it almost by 50%. But since he's familiar with that, I'd like for him to be part of the roads that have already been OGM. And it's obvious where we need some better drainage. On A road, using A road for an example, there's places that hold the water when the rain comes 2 and 3 days, and it's starting to eat the side of the road up. So I would hope that we could get George on that as soon as possible, working with the Water Control District, and see where he feels like we need better drainage right now, so that could be taken care of before they come back in.
Okay. All right, we're done with 10C. Moving to 10D, properties.
County donated parcels. I got to compliment Marge on this. Okay, and I got to apologize for my unawareness that we didn't accept all these parcels when it was brought to our attention when Frank Spence was here. I'm hoping and I believe we accepted the parcel on 22nd Road North off C Road, because that's where we did the drainage ditch. And we've got a section over there that we could use for something in the future. I would like to see if the staff needs Marge's help with this, because she seems to be very well informed about it. And Mark, did you have anything, did you find out any information this afternoon?
Yes, sir. Yeah, kudos to Marge. She did provide the information. Braden of our staff actually talked with a gentleman by the name of Richard, I believe he pronounces his name Bogatin, relative to those properties that were offered at that time, as the Vice Mayor indicated. And apparently most of them, with the exception of 1 or 2, are still available. So it appears what we're going to have to do is pretty much write them a letter and indicate that we're interested, and we can probably do business and get those properties. So the question that we'll probably need tonight is, an authorization from you to have us go out and contact the county and see about getting these properties.
Are they looking for the back taxes to be paid, or what are they looking for?
They may, because there is an issue with the 22nd. There apparently is some back taxes that wasn't paid. What we were told by them was apparently at the time, I guess, the town was looking for some sweeteners to take these properties, and they weren't going to do that. They were willing to give them to us, but and I don't know if one of those sweeteners was take care of the back taxes, County. I don't know. I'd like to do more research on that.
22nd came with a negotiated $5,000.
Yes, that's correct.
Right, and I think we used that. The other roads we gave back to town manager at the time to do some more work on. That never came back, because we went back to our minutes, and I think it was in October, I want to say 10, but maybe older, but maybe it was that time frame. Marge probably helped us. But there was, I think, 4 roads. But the 22nd, we had done a lot of work on 22nd. We did negotiate some payments so we could do a survey for those funds to improve the road. And I don't know if the back taxes were Water Control District taxes or they were other taxes. And if it's Water Control District,
we're not sure what they were.
all right, if they're Water Control District taxes, then we ought to be able to work with Water Control District maybe to get them to forgive those taxes if that's what they want. But what were the other 2 the other property?
One lot. There was,
Yeah, that's right.
It's, I believe,
There's 3 or 4 properties, I believe. One's a strip on 147th,
Raymond Drive
Raymond Drive.
and 34th.
Is there any sizes to these in your mind?
Yeah.
It's basically the roadways.
Yeah.
The roadways?
Yes, the right of ways.
Let me give you an example. One of these properties that we could have had, okay, it just went out for bid a week or 2 ago. Had 3 people bid on it. One bid 5,000, one bid 8,800, one bid 16,600. Something tells me he's the one that got the property. Now, what it said about that property before it came out to bid, this was approximately, hang on a minute, let me find it. 0.28 acres, okay? That's one of the smaller ones, but it also said a buildable lot near 2 other properties on like-sized lots. Now, 0.2 acres, I've got a couple lots in Okeechobee, and they don't even begin to get near that big, and I can put a house on it. So I personally think we missed out on a good deal. If we would have gotten that free, we could have been the ones that put it up for bid, and we could have made the 16,000 or something. So even if we had to pay the taxes, the other example is there's a parcel on Raymond Drive that's 0.27 acres. That's approximately almost as big as the one that just went out for bid. On North Road, 147th, okay? We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 residents that's involved in this, and it's 0.23 acres on each one of them. Now, something tells me that might have something to do with their easement or their right-of-way. I'm just guessing that. So there's a few things we can do. First of all, if we needed it for the easement to make 147th decent road, decent drainage in the future, we've got it. If we wanted to give it back to the residents, rather than have some contractor come in and bid on these properties and then charge the residents an arm and a leg to get their easements, you know what I'm saying? So there's a lot of positive things that can come out of this. I'd like to hear from Marge.
okay, Mark, come on up.
Marge Herzog, A Road. I worked with Richard Begotten, and he did say that most of the properties that the county still is holding that belong in Loxahatchee Groves are easements. And for some reason, when the lots were drawn up, they didn't bring them out as far as the others. So it created little pockets of county-owned land. So, and the taxes that are owed on those are the non-ad valorem, which means the water control district. There are no county taxes on them because the county can't tax the county. So the people on 147th were very concerned about what would happen if someone did bid on that strip, and I asked Richard Begotten about that, and he said that because of the potential for abuse, you know, and requiring residents to pay like tolls to get across their own property, he said that they would not list those out for bid. But he would like to have the town take some action on them because they want to offload these properties. They belong to the town. And they should be used either for easements or turned back to the residents. And I gave you a breakdown of my recommendation for, if you want to turn them back to the residents, you have the names of everybody involved.
Okay, all right. Yeah, go ahead,
One
Mark.
last comment. Marge did an outstanding job. The last email that Marge sent me, town staff had checked with the county, but they couldn't find anybody to help them out with this situation. The last email that Marge sent me gave us the Richard C. Bogat, and Mark and them contacted him this afternoon, and so they found out. But she has been a lot of help. I would like to see if she has the time, if the staff can use Marge to make this a quick process, I would like to see them work together on this, because this should be a priority, because it'll benefit our residents, or it could benefit the town. It's a win-win situation. And now I remember, Marge, because you brought it up, the water control district, they kidded us about it, but they waived the 5,000 ad valorem. So basically, it wouldn't be costing us anything. So I regret that we missed this one buildable lot, but let's don't make the same mistake and lose something else.
Okay. Do we need a motion?
We would appreciate a motion to direct us, to go ahead and we'll take care of it.
Okay. All right, I'll entertain a motion.
What was the motion? I need to direct staff to contact the county and get the property.
Direct staff to contact, if there's any costs incurred or to be incurred, we need to know that, no?
Right.
Once you contact the county, we're going to be back to you, documents, costs, everything else.
Contact
We
the
need a
county.
motion to
Move forward.
move forward on all the properties they have in their inventory.
Okay. So moved.
Second.
Okay, further discussion by council. And the only thing that I've got is maybe, I like the idea of making it available to the people that live there. And maybe what we can do is if we can gain this property, let them pay what goes to the water control board, because it's legitimately going to the water control board, and nobody's paying it, and by paying that, they get the property. So some way we work with them that way. They gain the property, they're not forced, and, you know, and so. But anyway, yeah, look into it. All in favor, signify by roll call.
Councilman Rocket,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Gerald,
Yes.
Mayor Brown.
Yes. All right, moving to 11A.
We need to give Sue more things to do. We've been letting her sit over here for a long time. No roll call.
I'm going to read you the votes. All right. 11A.
Okay. Thank you, Your Honor. This is the invitation to bid for gravel road grading, mowing, and vegetative removal services. I did provide you with a very lengthy report. I'll run through it real quickly. This invitation to bid was noticed on the town website on January 17th, as well as the Palm Beach Post on January 20th and January 24th. It was also available on the OnVia website. The due date for bidders to submit their transmittals was March 15th, 2013 at 2:30. On March 15th, the town received the 5 bid transmittals. We have provided the bid summary sheet and the working group sheet. We did convene a working group which consisted of Virginia Standish, a member of the Town Finance Advisory and Audit Committee, and Keith Harris, a member of the Planning and Zoning Board, to assist Pearl Underwood and myself with the review of all the bid proposals. Obviously, those people were chosen because of being board members as well as having a background related to these particular items. We did have 2 initial meetings to review the materials on March 27, 2013, and then on April 9th, 2013. And basically, I've given you a recommendation. We've indicated that what we did do was a couple of the services that you can see on your working group sheet, your summary sheet. We recommended that we take road grading and rock material, and we go ahead and we combine those. We combine the mowing and vegetative removal and dumping fees, and then road repairs and emergency call-outs are to be awarded individually. We recommend that you award these group services and separate services to the low bidders and authorize the town manager and town attorney to draft the contracts with town council approval. And I will tell you, our procurement code does indicate that contracts shall be awarded to the lowest responsive bidder. In determining the lowest responsive bidder, the chief procurement officer, who is also the town manager, looks at the prices contained, and there's about another 12 or 13 items, including the overall cost of the town, best interest of the town, the ability, capacity of the bidder to perform the contract services, history, character, integrity. There's a whole bunch of things you look at to go into that. But basically, so to summarize, what we're indicating then is that for the road grading and the base rock requirements, we are recommending that you award that bid to the Waxahachie Groves Water Control District. For road grading, it was $110 per mile cost, and the base rock was $14 for 57 mix and $12 for 1 inch minus. In terms of mowing, vegetative removal per cubic yard and vegetative dumping fees per cubic yard, we recommend the low bidder, which was CC Loader. They were $54 an hour for mowing, and $40 an hour for the mowing, and then $3.50 for each vegetative removal per cubic yard and vegetative dumping fees per cubic yard. Road repairs, the hourly rate, the low bidder was Waxahachie.
Quick question.
Yes.
You verified with him $3.50 a
Yes.
cubic yard for that?
Yes.
Vegetative removal per
Yes.
cubic yard?
And I guess if there's any change now, that'll be the time to come forward.
No, I didn't get a thing up, I got a broke leg here. That,
Right? I mean, we're.
yeah,
Okay.
Okay.
I just wanted to confirm that.
It's got a broken leg, that's gonna walk a microphone.
Okay.
Oh, man.
Well, I used to do that.
No, I mean, I just looked at those numbers, and if we were bidding brickwork and I saw one that much lower than everybody else, I would wonder,
Well, we looked at it too. We questioned it. but-
the vegetation removal is like I've done for the town before, which come out at $3.50 per load. But that's why I went to Mark and said that it was made on a tonnage basis when that come out, and you can't measure a tonnage basis because we don't have scales. So I had to go on a yardage basis. That's a cubic yard per truck.
okay.
Okay, so there's dumping fees, which is part of it, and the other $3.50 per yard is the trucking fee. So that's the way I understood it.
Yeah, so it's, what do you have, a 20-yard truck? Or you
50.
50, okay.
And that's what I picked up, it worked out to $3.50 a load, and that's what I did at the other same contract that when I picked up vegetation.
Yeah, it'd be, well, I mean, less.
$175 for the dump fee, $175 for the haul.
Okay, well, you got it.
And I've done it twice.
Cool. Cool. Good, I just saw it and,
Yeah.
I didn't want to get you in trouble, so, anyway, okay.
And Mark, I've got to ask John a question while he's up there, save him from walking back. Now, you got the bid on mowing, okay, and hedging. All right. Now, do you have a equipment to do the hedging, just like the Water Control District does it now? Because when the contracts are signed, we've got roads out here, town roads that need hedging, and they've needed it for over a month now.
I have a better machine that I've just purchased
Okay,
that will go on my rubber tire excavator 2C.
okay.
When is it gonna happen? That's the problem I got, and I've got it in process of being mounted on it. It is better than the one that was down Okeechobee Road
Okay.
that can mow it and hedge it, really nice.
And the other thing about the mowing now, in other words, when we're talking about removal of vegetation, and I just need a clarification, the mowing consisted of hedging and removal, if necessary. Now, that's where I'm talking about drainage ditches. In other words, when I talk about if there's anything in that drainage ditch that needs to be mowed or removed, is that in your price for the $3.50 per cubic feet?
No, that's a 40.
No, I mean, that's 40. In other words, that's what I'm getting at. You'll do that for 40.
Right, and then you have to take the other, and you know, that's the yardage that goes in the truck.
Okay.
$175 for the dump fee, $175 for
But
the
the
haulers.
labor's the 40.
The labor is,
Like to do the actual cleaning of the ditch.
yes.
Yeah.
Was the 40. And you pick it up. Okay.
Good deal.
Thank you, Mr. Shuckett. And then finally, the road repairs hourly rate, $50 an hour, that would be awarded to the Waxahachie Grove Water Control District. And the emergency call-outs hourly rate is $50 to the Waxahachie Groves Water Control District. So basically, 4 out of the items, the Water Control District was the low bidder, and for the other 3 items combined, basically it's C&C low. And that is our recommendation.
Okay. Do you need a motion?
Yes.
Okay, who wants to make a motion?
We discussed it. I'll make a motion that we accept the recommendation of town. And,
I'll second. And for discussion.
yes. Question, this is, we had been for a number of years now looking for a list of service providers that we could call on. The mechanism we have now completed is we now can avail ourselves of basically a list of providers. And what we're setting, I think, is the order in which that list is addressed. I don't want to ignore the second or even third provider of the service if the first cannot provide the service in a reasonable point in time. And the reasonable point in time, I think we have to assess. What we've all along said, and behind this whole exercise, is we need a list that we can go to for anything. And now you've got the anythings columnarized, and we've got names associated with it. But it would be like the first call out, first place you go, then the second and the third. And in conjunction with that, for example, if I was to ask for, well, let's pick the emergency call out. The window of opportunity for that is usually pretty slim, pretty narrow, because if it's an emergency, you need it done now. If we call the water control district and we need something done, they have the responsibility, I guess, to tell us when they can do it, when they can do it, and if they can do what we think we need done. Often we don't really know exactly what it might be until you get there in an emergency situation. So in that case, what I'm looking at is that tonight we identify the first, I'll call it the first responders, but we also identify the second. In this particular case, if we were to use price only, and we said for emergency call-out it was $50, and they could not respond based on some criteria, whether it be timing or the needs of whatever needs to be done, that we would then turn to CNC Loader and ask them to do the work that needs to be done. Now, we all know that CNC Loader has responded in emergency cases before, specifically in Isaac, and did a lot of work for us at the crazy hours of the night. But their rate that they other point I'm making is the rate that they would charge would not be $50. The rate that CNC Loader would charge would be $75 if they were asked to do the work because our first selection could not. It would not be $50. And I want to clarify that. The council, I believe, has the right to decide that. But that goes along with what we're trying to decide tonight, not just one person doing the work forever.
Let me jump in on that. I respectfully don't agree with you. Here's the reason why, and let me just explain. This was not an RFP where we were going to try to set aside one or two or three folks and put them on continuing service contract. This was a bid. So relative to the purity of the system, you are awarding to the low bidder. Now, if you are talking about setting up like a rotational schedule, in which, and probably the best example of that would be like towing companies. Usually they do contracts like that. What you would have to do is, if you were trying to get a second entity on board, they would have to honor the bid price. So if you wanted to use grading or if you wanted to use emergency call-out, CC Loader is the second in both of those. They would have to come down and do it at the same price as the Waxahachie Groves Water Control District. At least that's my understanding. The attorney can weigh in, but I don't think you can then put CC and Loader on as a second entity, and now all of a sudden they're going to do it $25 more. I think there has to be a parity in price.
Well, let me say this then, Mark. If we're at that point, then I suggest, from my perspective, you missed our request by a lot. We have talked about a laundry list of we can turn to multiple service providers when we need them. We can pick from number one. If they can't do it, we have a backup. We specifically talked about Water Control District being the number one in many cases in the past, but we needed a second person to go to, which was why we needed to get some RFPs out there, some information back to us, so we had some backup people. Now, that's what we needed. That's what we needed. And with that, was there never was a suggestion that we only were going to have one, and we were only going to have one at the price that they bid. That was never anything that I heard council comment on. So I think if I believe we need to work through what we have in front of us to select who's first, but at the same time, we need the second and third. And as far as I'm concerned, if 4 out of the 5 can't do what we need done, then we turn to the 5th. But that's part of what we asked to have done. I think, I may be off, but...
Well, if we're talking RFP, you're absolutely correct, but my understanding is we asked you this many times. We said we're going to do it as an ITB, and you all agreed.
Well, I'm Dave, I'm kind of repeating what I think you said, that we wanted, well, let me not say anything.
Rob,
This might help. We've got 1, 2, 3 contractors in this room right tonight. Okay, now, CNC Loader, they're very comparable to the Water Control District in emergency situation. They're $75 and the Water Control is $50. Now, there's no doubt in my mind, the way the Water Control runs their business, and they can get in here, but they may be a situation where we've got supervisors with the Water Control Board, they may be a situation in a hurricane or something like that where somebody like CNC Loader for $75 could be sizing things up while the Water Control District is coming here. And both outfits have but I'd like to ask the 3 contractors, since the bids are over now, the problem may be solved with the other contractors, be agreeable to follow the prices that the low bidder got. Could you even, you can't do that? Okay.
Okay. Let me back up a little bit and see. Here's what you have before you is you have a low bid, lowest qualified bidder for each of the services. And that's one thing that you're being asked to discuss. And the second thing that I'm hearing is to have a rotation or some sort of work. I'm not sure if I understand whether that's going to be for everything or just for the emergency call out. Because you would think everything else could be scheduled and worked out with the contractor that you select to do work authorization. I think the emergency call out is different. You just by its nature, you just don't know. And if the council wants to award more than one contract, it makes sense. Even though I don't think you're hamstrung by that when it comes to emergency call out. The other ones I'm not. Typically, when you do this type of bid, you award it to the prime, the highest rated, and you go on. The only one I've seen are, like we have our emergency push, you have multiples. That's for what it's worth.
Well, I might, and let me ask you this from the legal aspect. If we got in a situation where the one we award the bid to, okay, and they couldn't do the job for whatever the reason, would town management have the capabilities of contacting the other people?
Yes, in emergency, your procurement does not affect emergency.
But the end of the question is, would the town staff be able to say, hey, this is what we awarded it to the Water Control District for? Do you want to come in and do it for that? That's what I'm asking.
Yeah, I'm pretty confident they could. I'll double check, but in an emergency, you call them up and say, hey, we've got a contract for 50, we do it for 50. They do it for 50, you're in. If they don't, and it's an emergency, you might have to, under those circumstances, pay more. It's an emergency, and you get it done. But our code does provide us, not just get through a thing, an exception to your procurement in the event of emergencies.
And we've done that in the past. I think it's important, if we put this out for bid like we did, that we go with what was here. If they don't perform, the Water Control Board's got a new manager. They're right here, they've got the equipment, I'm sure they're going to perform. There was a question before as to whether we really didn't have a good ironclad contract with them to do this stuff. So, I think just the bidding process, I know in construction, if you're awarded a bid, nobody says, well, if you can't perform tomorrow, we're going to go get the second bidder or the third bidder and bring them in here. There are other ways of doing it. So if we've got the way of doing it emergency-wise,
I do. It's ordinance 2008, 09, Big C, 2A. Emergency purchases, town manager is empowered to waive competitive bidding and secure by open market procedures, which will be phone calls, whatever he can to get the price, notwithstanding the estimated cost of the commodity or service. So, emergency purchases.
You remember we did that during tropical storm Isaac.
Sure.
Okay. My point was that we had conversations about backup provider of service many times. And at that time, granted it was in a time before our current administration, but at that time, we specifically said we were trying to go to the Water Control District first. We need a second, and we might need a third. We had that conversation. In that process of this process, I thought we were going to be able to accomplish that by having backup people that we could turn to, because if we get a call for something that needs to be done, and we have set the time limits as a council, as when we expect something to be done. If we get a call for a road to be graded, or if we get a call for some vegetation to be trimmed, we expect that to be done within a reasonable time, whatever that reasonable time is. If it's a week, and for some reason the Water Control District can't do the job, we need a backup person. So if it's grading and we can't get it done, and I thought, and all the conversations we've had in the past were, first choice was Water Control District. Second and third choice we didn't have yet, and we needed someone. So I don't know where that fell under, through the cracks here as far as I'm concerned. I thought that's what we were going to be able to get. But as far as emergency call-outs, if our second highest bidder, or second lowest bidder wants to do it for $50, that's fine. We can certainly ask, but if they don't, what do we do? So,
Last comment on this, the way I understand it, help me out here, is basically we've got 5 people here, and that these 5 are going to be on the list for the town. And they're not, okay, all right, that's what I need to clarify.
Unless you declare that you want a rotational schedule, and they're willing to honor the same price as the low bidder.
We put this out for bid. We've got a list, and it's secret bids, and that's the reason it's that way. Everybody gives you your best shot, and the lowest one should get the job if they're qualified to do the job. I mean, that's the bottom line, is the way I look at it. Cut and dry. If for some reason legally they do not perform, then there's a process we go through to take it away from them and go to the next one, or reopen it for another bid. But that's a legality. If we all of a sudden have a rotational thing, and Mark likes a certain guy better, he could say, oh, you know what, yeah, we're going to give it to the guy, even though it's going to cost, twice as much or 3 times as much, but I like him. So all of a sudden he rotated up a little bit better. So, I think that the process we did was to award it to the low bidder.
Now, I'll just say this, Mayor. Councilman Rocket is absolutely correct. We did have
numerous
discussions about whether we were going to do RFP or ITB. And I remember even having some discussions with the Water Control District. And I remember Supervisor Ryan said, go ITB. We can beat anybody. I mean, the district was that confident.
Right. Because prior to that, we were not going to go with a bid and get a contractor to do it. Prior to that, we were just going to establish a list and go down that list, and if one couldn't do it, we went to the next one. That's what we're talking to at that time. But I think what we ended up doing was
well, it's been over 3 years we've talked about the concept of having backup bids at Water Control District. What we've accomplished tonight is we don't have a backup person to provide the service if the Water Control District can't do it. And I think we have to set reasonable time frames, because that's what we had conversations about in the past. It couldn't get done within the time frame. And for whatever reason, I mean, it wasn't that Water Control District didn't want to do it, they couldn't. They didn't have the resources. So that's what we were trying to provide to this town. And if we resort to, well, we've got these guys now, and in the case of road grading, we are no different than we were years ago, in that the Water Control District, except for the administrator, I have to certainly say that, but we are no different in that we have one source. If the one source can't get it done because of resource limitation, we are stuck with the lack of service at a reasonable, let's say, time frame. If we set a week as the time frame that we want something done in, if somebody calls and says they need it done, and we ascertain that they need to road graded, then we set a week and we can't get it done, then what do we do? Well, what I just heard you say was, well, we have a legal process to take away the contract from them and spend probably 6 months going back to getting something else.
In between, if now we can determine it's an emergency, and we can go to whoever we need to get it done.
I came off the emergency, Mr. Mayor, I was talking about. I understand the emergency. We seem to have the ability. I don't know if the contractor that was second or third was going to do the work for $50. That's something for them to determine. I wouldn't ask them to do that, but in an emergency, I understand we set that separate. But I'm talking about the basic items that we've talked about providing to this town and set a reasonable goal as far as getting it done. If you can't get graded in a week, it won't get graded, is what we're saying. And that's no different than it was for the last 3 years.
Your Honor,
We have not gained a service level that I thought we were trying to do. And if you use abbreviations with me in the future, I'm going to ask you to spell out every one of them and define them, because that didn't fly. That's not flying with me. You know, it's quick saying one thing versus another. I wanted a service enhancement that we needed. And so if that's where we're at now, that's fine, but I expect us to talk a little more about the emergency call.
Here's how I would suggest the process works. We go ahead and we initiate the contract with the lowest responsible bidder. Okay, you develop the contract. Now, I would expect that the Water Control District, like any other private entity builder, once they go ahead and they bid on work, they're going to warrant that they're going to meet our demands, just like we would request that CC Loader or any other private company meet our demands. If they can't meet the demands, then you go to the next bidder. I mean, that, otherwise you don't get in the game. You don't.
The negotiation.
Yes, exactly.
I don't understand what you just said. You just said we're awarding it to the lowest bidder. Now you said you're going to go to the next bidder.
No, he's going to negotiate what we're doing tonight. This motion is to let him negotiate with the lowest bidder. And as long as they meet the negotiations and the qualifications, we're going to go with the low bidder. If for some reason they don't, then he's going to go off the list to the next one and negotiate with him, and then come back with the final.
Well, and that's what I was trying to clarify. In other words, Jim's trying to clarify that we have a list. That's what he's trying to clarify. And then what he just said was we have a list, and
But you're not doing a contract with all five of them.
No, I didn't say nothing about a contract now. I just said a list. And that's what Jim is referring to. We have a list to fall back on. Nothing to do with a contract.
But be careful, because I think you think that this list is going to go on after the contract's awarded, and it won't. Once the contract is negotiated, it will be negotiated with these contractors that meet the criteria and meet the negotiations, and then at that point, we can still go with somebody else in an emergency, but whoever we give the contract to will have the contract to do that work. There will not be a rotating list later on. These other guys will basically come off, they'll be in the file, but they won't be on the phone list saying, well, we're going to call you for this one, and we're going to call this other for the other.
The contractors that are not awarded the bid, this list will be a mere resource to the town manager if he needs to go and do open market quotes for emergency work. And if something were to happen with your prime contractor and the town council were to terminate, at that point, there's other provisions in the code that allows you to waive bidding, do direct contract, things like that. You wouldn't have to go through, or you can choose to do that at that time as well. But the difference is, and the mayor said, in this particular case, you'll be awarding a contract, and assuming you enter into a contract with these folks, the prices are in there, RFP provided for a term of the contract, it provided for termination, it provided for insurance, it provided for indemnification. So I would expect that you'd be able to have the contract negotiated with the highest rated or the recommended bidders. Once that happens, that's it. That's your contract, that's your vendor, that's who you use. And you'll only go off that in the event of an emergency as authorized by your code.
Okay. All right, and that's the motion in a second, correct? All right, we've got Penny, Rick Yost.
We didn't vote.
No, we haven't voted. We're going to get, and then I've got George Perez.
Penny Riccio, 12795 First Place North of the Acreage. I represent Cigar Trucking Inc., which was one of the bidders on the contract. And I believe it should be brought to the attention of the board. It will be in your packet under request for sealed bids, bid proposal date, and then bid submission deadline. Under there is a paragraph, because I do prepare all the bids for Cigar Trucking Inc., and I'm very, very thorough and very careful with what I do. Under there it says sealed written bids must be received by the town of Loxahatchee Energy Groves, town clerk's office, no later than the date, time, and at the location indicated above for the bid submission. I was there at the offices. All the bidders were on time with their submission. The next is submittal of response by fax is not acceptable. I don't believe any of them faxed anything in. However, upon opening the bid packages, and I was there when they were opened, It did require 1 electronic DVD copy and 5 copies of your bid proposal, 5 copies along with your original, that is telling you, and response forms must be returned to the town or your bid may be disqualified. Ours was complete. There were some bidders that did not follow that direction. And normally, when you bid on contracts of any sort with any governmental agency, they must be complete, otherwise they are disqualified or dismissed. So I would ask that you inquire of that of your city manager as to which ones, because I'm not at liberty to say, but he does have the list.
Okay. Do you have an answer for this, Mark, or all these came up within what we needed?
There were a couple of discrepancies. For example, that one of the vendors did not have the required number of documents, copies, and the DVD. I believe what she's referring to is the fact that the Water Control District did not submit 2 of the forms that were required. And I didn't bring their copy with me. I think one of them was the public entities. But it's all the additional boilerplate that must be submitted. Now, technically, you could say she's correct. I mean, if you wanted to hold to a very firm line, you could say the fact that those documents weren't provided, then you could throw out the Water Control District. But we did provide information in here which gave you the ability to waive those requirements, and I would say that would you agree they're a non-material item as opposed to...
Well, the bid very specifically says that you reserve the right to reject any and all proposals to waive technical or legal deficiencies, except any bid proposal that may deem to be in the best interest of the town. But however, what you have to determine in the waiver is whether the legal deficiency created some sort of advantage. And if I remember correctly, I think you may have waived similar things when you did your town management selection. There may have been some technical deficiencies in some of those, and you waived it to go ahead and proceed and consider all the applicants at that time, so it's precedent for the town. So, but it's your prerogative. If you move forward with your recommendation, that's going to be considered part of your motion that you waived whatever deficiencies have been identified to you.
Okay. All right. I've got George Perez.
George Perez, 1544 B Road. Wanted to comment on some of the things that management tried to clear up. There's still some questions about. With the town, and what you guys are doing, is you're picking the low bids on 5 or 6 different items. When you bid a job like this, the lowest bidder should be doing all the work. I don't think it'd be fair for John to be doing mowing at 40 and not getting the grading of the rock. That's one thing. The other thing is the specs were so vague on the emergency services. That's why you had numbers all across the board. For example, I submitted numbers that included equipment supervision, as John included just the supervisor only, which makes sense. You don't know because there's nothing in the specifications that details anything, what you need or who to show up with. I feel it was very vague. They should have some idea of what equipment you needed to show up and how to do the work, whatever it is. It's open-ended. You don't know how to bid something like that. And to clarify what Mr. Gerald said, hedging isn't mowing. Mowing is done by a bush hog on the side of the tanks. We're talking about hedging, which is clear cutting 15 or 20 feet up, like the district does. And because it was so vague, I think you guys ought to start over. We throw this bid out and start over with something a little bit more detailed. And I think in the bid somewhere, it does say that you're going to choose several different contractors. I think it repeatedly says that, but it doesn't say, which brings to mind the rotation, which is what I thought might happen. That you'd have 4 or 5 different bidders, and it's obvious if we have a hurricane, the district is going to be slapped full with taking care of district roads, and they might not be able to get out there. It's very likely that's going to happen. Mr. Rockman is right on that. You need to go to the second guy. But the second guy can't handle it as well, or you need 2 or 3 people doing it, then I guess my point is, I think the RFP or the invitation to bid was really vague. Thanks.
Okay. All right, we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion by council?
Do we need to amend the motion because we do have the right to waiver discrepancies and stuff if it's in the best interest of the town. And there's no doubt in my mind, the low bid is in the best interest of the town. Now, George said something about what equipment needed and stuff like that. Basically, you don't know what equipment's gonna be needed until the situation happens. So I personally don't see how you can specify certain stuff like that. In emergency situations, you don't know whether you're gonna need a backhoe loader or whatever. So that's the way I look at that.
Okay. All right, John Ryan, and then we're going to get to a vote.
John Ryan, 3508 Lee Road. Two comments. One, part of the process was the submittal of questions or clarification requests to the town during a meeting that was all contracted, all the prospective bidders were invited to. So if there was any clarification that somebody might have had in their mind as to what the bid meant, it should have been brought up then. The other thing, the form that I'm aware of that the district didn't provide with the bid was because we were using the attachments for the original invitation to bid, and they didn't have a special form for the district, which is not a corporation or partnership or an LLC. But the meeting of the district before the bid was submitted, the board authorized David Damaris to sign the papers for the district. So it was a matter of public record that we gave him the authority to sign the paperwork for the district bid. So it's a matter of public record at the time the bid was submitted.
Okay, thank you, John. All right, we have a motion and a second. Roll call vote.
Another question.
Okay.
One of the concerns I have is that the Water Control District has to staff up its resources in anticipation of, one of the things I think in the bid was that we would have all the town roads graded twice a month. I don't remember the council ever telling anybody that we were going to do them twice a month, but maybe I missed that. But it's in the bid document. I don't know where it came from, it's there. So my concern is that if you ask to provide services to the town, then you have to be able to do those roads that many times. You have to have the resources to do it. Now, it's difficult to budget your resources in terms of some are not paid for yet because they have to be as a result of services provided to somebody else, and some are paid for out of the residents' requirements to do district road maintenance. It's one thing to have the flexibility, if you will, to do a road and grading it with district resources because you happen to have them available. But it's another thing if you staff up to make sure you have, basically, you grow your resources because you're going to do more work than you've been required to do in the past. Now, one thing that I've spoken to the Water Control District about this, it's not a negative, if you will, to the Water Control District, but you and I know that most of the budget that the Water Control District operates under comes out of our pocket, goes in our community. You also know that a small portion of our town budget comes out of our pocket in terms of ad valorem taxes. My concern is that if we don't have a backup provided, we don't have somebody that the Water Control District can provide the services when it works for them, but if they always have to be providing the service, then they're going to be staffing, or they have to staff to a higher level than they would have to do the district work. Now, I would suggest to you that if you work numbers, and I'm trying to make it simple. If you look at our budget, the town might pay a quarter of every dollar that we spend out of the town residents' pockets, 25%. It's actually less than that. The Water Control District, every dollar they spend, approximately 85 cents comes out of our pocket, the residents and landowners. My concern is that it may look cheaper on paper, but when you track it back to the pocketbooks of these residents and landowners, you're actually paying, if you will, 85 cents times, in the first case, $110 out of your pocket, and you're paying a quarter of, in this case, 157 for C and St. Louis Loader, out of your pocket. So from the standpoint of who's paying for these services, it's the residents and landowners. When you talk about what actually comes out of their pocket, it's not proportional, it's not one for one, it's far greater if the Water Control District does the work. Now, trying to summarize what I'm telling you, it's not cheaper because of the cheaper rate, except if the Water Control District can manage their business, and it's difficult, to say, I'm only going to staff, I have to have people to do the district work, and the other costs that I'm going to incur for the town, I'm only going to rely on funding from the town in our contract. So if our non-ad valorem taxes don't reflect the work that is being done for the town, that's fine. But if they're inclined to, it's difficult to do it the other way, is you actually only resource staff to what has to be done by the district. If you have to resource staff because of a contract for services that we can't say have been done every, it's not a pre-described schedule of events where they have to plan to be able to do it, but it's going to lead to a greater cost to the residents of this community if that's what has to be done. It's a difficult task. I don't know, I'm sure Steve understands, he knows what we're talking about, I've talked to him about it, and I know John knows what I'm talking about, that the actual cost out of the pocket of our residents is greater when you talk about a dollar spent at the Water Control District than it is out of what the town pays for. So if I paid somebody $157 out of town money, that's not that much money out of the pocket of the residents. If I pay $110 to the Water Control District, and they have to do it through the residents' non-ad valorem tax to staff up, then they're paying more than they should. So it's a balance, a difficult balance. It's also very hard to explain. But if we say that we're going to have every town road done twice a month, we've never done that before. We've never stepped up to that. And we put that in the bid, so I presume that our contract has to say that. We've never agreed to that. So I think part of what we need to do, I would grant, we vote on this motion, but we need to define what the services and the contract really has to include, because I've never said that every road has to be graded twice a week or twice a month. So let's proceed with the vote.
Okay, Ron?
Just a question on that. It didn't say in there because, first of all, for us to say that every road has to be graded twice a month, we got one of the worst roads in Loxahatchee and the longest. And sometimes we're only graded once a month. And I would have thought that in that contract it would have been a minimum of twice a month if needed, because some roads may go longer than a month and never need grading. That's what the residents would call us and say, hey, my road needs grading. So did it not say if needed?
It says that you expect it, so we can put in there that needed. It said that the town expects that it will have to be done twice.
I think we need to clarify a little bit
We'll
more
clarify
if
that.
needed.
Yeah, we could put that up too, because there's really no need to pay for those miles to go in there and grade it if it's not needed.
See, and we use that language because at one point in time during one of the earlier IGC meetings, this was talked about a lot. That was one of the proposals that was tossed out there, was that we try to do every road 2 times a month. And we questioned that, whether that was needed or not. But at least we use that as a level of service standard in this bid.
This level of service we rejected, by the way.
We, and along those lines, and I know where Jim's coming from, at the same time, the Water District has been doing a lot of courtesy grading.
Yes.
That honestly has cost it, along your parameter, more because they weren't getting any money at all back from it. So I'm going to assume that Steve is going to, reallocate or add more people to do this work, because he's going to know he's going to have it. And it might mean that he'll be able to get more equipment that will be paid for by the town to take care of this stuff through this contract. And he's here. And along the other thing, anybody that was here during the hurricanes before we were a town, it was amazing how quickly the Water Control Board got those roads open and everything moving. And some of those were some nasty storms. So, you know, and we had no town then. So I have no doubt that they can do it. I think in the past, it's been a question of getting paid and how do we allocate it, and this is courtesy, or are we getting paid for it? So anyway, I'm comfortable with it the way it is. So anyway, roll call vote.
Okay. Mr. Rackert made the motion to accept the recommendation of town management to negotiate with the lowest bidder. And did you want to include leaving any deficiencies that were identified in the motion?
She's just asking for,
Do you want to clarify that by awarding this, you're waiving those technical and legal deficiencies that were identified tonight?
Also, do we have the emergency, we know that the emergency case is different, and we have the option based on our procurement policy. So
Yes, you do.
awarding it this way does not preclude a backup in an emergency case.
That's correct.
that's correct.
Yes.
All right, Councilman Rackert,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Giro,
Yes.
and Mayor Bryan.
Yes. All right. Moving on to closing comments.
One of the things I think we need, Mr. Mayor, is we need to back up some point, somehow, a way to get an alternative supplier to the services that the Water Control District does, and the CDC would be doing. We need something, a plan to achieve that, and I don't know how to get there.
I'll invite him out, look at it.
All right, public comments. I've got 2 here, 3. Kevin Garreau. Come on up, Kevin.
Kevin Garreau, 13650 6th Court Ward. I was at the planning and zoning meeting, the last one. The Simon property engineers, I felt, were unduly castigated. They provided too much information. It was too detailed. And both were trying to do the same thing, which was move from the current old zoning to the current new zoning that the new town roads had. Yet, and of course there were some other waivers that they both were trying to do, which one pulled back on the waivers, the other tried to move forward. Solar sports systems, on the other hand, were quickly approved because they provided very little information. And in fact, Miller Engineering even said during their proposal that they knew that with the town council, if they provided too much at one time, that they would be basically, they'd pick apart every little detail. I think that was unfair, and I agree with and concur with management that the tabling of the Simon property engineers was causing unnecessary delay. Number 3 about the pond siting, that's my number 3, 2 is the 2 I just mentioned. I want to thank the town manager. He got back with me. I was able to have a teleconference with Thomas Ruiz, the project engineer from Stantec, along with State Road 80. And number 4, I agree with the earlier comments about changing or agreeing with changing the humps, because they got to be more sloped like they are in Sycamore, so we don't adhere and jockey back and forth while we drive over these incredible humps. Thank you.
Thank you. March?
March Herzog, A-Road. I wanted to agree with Mr. Rocket that the list that I have for email is a private list agreed to with the Landowners Association, that I would not forward it to anyone without their permission. So it is not available. Also, I think when you're sending out your postcard about the newsletter, it seems like it would be a better idea to let them know that the newsletter would be posted on the website on a certain week of the month, rather than asking for their emails, which it's going to be hit or miss. I mean, your percentage is going to be very low of people that are going to respond. So I think putting it on the website would be a better idea.
Thank you, March. Ronnie?
Ronnie Corral, 3442 D Road. What we have is a problem on D Road. Somebody put up a nursery or something, and they put up 4 big football field spotlights. You come down D Road from Southern, and you get blinded by the spotlights. I mean, you all want safety, you got 22, 40 speed humps, but we got this big old light shining down the road, and a car was passing me on the canal side. I'm going that way towards Okeechobee. I couldn't see the car. There was nothing but a big spotlight there. All they got to do is move the post to the front and face it in, or get some dogs to get rid of the spotlight.
Thank you. Will you get with Mark and give him that address?
Okay.
And we'll see what we can do. Okay, moving to Mike, Town Attorney.
Good evening.
No wonder I sounded brilliant tonight. Okay, this is better. Sorry if you hadn't heard me before. I was here. Okay, I have a request of the Town Council pursuant to Chapter 286 and requesting a closed-door attorney-client session in the lawsuit of Willie H. and Frankie J. Day versus Town of Loxahatchee Groves in Palm Beach County Circuit Court, case number 502-2012, 014543. I'd like to have, that request is being made by the town's Special Defense Counsel, Michael Burke, to discuss the status of litigation. I'd like to have it at a time when all 5 of the council members are present, so I'm recommending prior to one of your next 2 meetings, either May 21st or June 4th. And I've been told the estimated time would be about an hour, so if we could do it like at 5:30 before one of those 2 meetings. I only have 3 of you here, but is there any scheduling conflicts with any of the 3 of you for either one of those times and dates? Okay.
21st is okay.
Okay.
I'm flexible for either one.
Yeah, the meeting nights, I'm good for either one.
Okay, so what we'll do is confirm, I'd like to have it on the 21st if we can. I'll confirm with Councilman Lang and Councilman Goldsonay to confirm their availability at those nights, and we'll notice it. I'll work with the town clerk to notice it and get the appropriate reporter for that night, and advise differently if it's going to be before June 4th.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? No go fingers? All right, moving to the council members. Ron?
No, I'm good. I just want to thank Marge again for the information and stuff she sent on these properties and stuff. I think it'll be beneficial for us. And again, I tell town management that if you can use her help and she's available, please use it, because our direction is that we want to take care of this. And just thank everybody for coming.
Okay, Jim.
I've got one item that I can see if we can't take care of. A while ago, we approved the purchase of CERT radio equipment, and evidently it's never been installed, in part because we never told anybody to install. So we have a tabletop coming up this week, and we still don't have the equipment installed, as I understand it. I'd like to see if we can't direct town management to make sure that happens. It would be an installation of an antenna on a water control district unit here. I know Steve's aware of it. I don't know if it can happen by Friday, but I'm always willing to say, if I don't ask, it can't happen, it never happens. So if we can ask Mark to see if he can get somebody out here, possibly before Friday. I don't know what the schedules are, but certainly make sure it's done soon afterwards if it's not done by the tabletop.
It probably won't be able to happen by Friday. Here's the reason. We actually, the CERT did provide us with one provider, Mr. Larry Lazar, and we did receive a quote from him. The only problem was the quote was too high and requires us to then go ahead and get 2 other verbal quotes. I did go back to CERT and requested that they give me 2 more names, and apparently they're having a problem coming up with 2 names, which means if I continue on, it's my problem, because I gotta find 2 more vendors and get 2 more quotes before we can even do anything. So I'll be happy to do that, but I'm just letting you know that's the process, that's what we're going through right now.
So the work quote was greater than, what is our procurement
If
policy
he came
say?
in under $1,000, we would have been able to outright let him go ahead and do it, but he came in at...
Well, don't tell us what he came in
I
at.
don't want
What is
to...
our procurement?
Yeah.
At that point, then, I'll pull up, but my recollection is that he still has to do some verbal quotes until it gets to, what is it, 5,000? Then it has to be written.
Yeah, 3,000
So,
is written,
and then-
5,000 is...
Right, and then at some point competitive. But if it's over 1,000, I'm assuming it's in that ballpark, that your code requires them to at least secure a couple other verbal quotes to confirm that the price is what it needs to be.
All right, is it possible we get verbal quotes without having to rely on CERT providing us with 2 more suppliers?
We're gonna look for 2 other vendors, but I'm just saying, it takes a little time, because even CERT had a hard time coming up with them, so I don't know if they're out there, or, you know, we'll see who else we can get, to make sure we're getting quotes on apples to apples kind of comparison.
I'm curious as to, you can't get to 2 relatively, what's the criteria when you do a verbal vote, and you say, I look in the yellow pages and I run in, I can't get any more than 2, what do? You have to keep looking because it says 3?
Yeah, there's some flexibility, you know.
Could we make a motion just to go with that vendor?
You might be able to, I just see whether I have the procurement code memorized.
I'm thinking along the lines with the mayor. In other words, we're having a hard time trying to get 2 more quotes. And it seemed like we could be justified in waiving this situation. I thought she was talking about $25,000.
While Mike is looking it up, let me make a suggestion, maybe what we do is we put a time limit on it. If we can't find 2 more vendors by, let's say...
Wednesday. Here's my concern. When did we buy this equipment? 2 or 3 months ago. And we didn't think to get it installed. Council didn't tell you to do it, so you didn't do it. Now, I understand that. But now we're at this point, and we're going to test what our capabilities are. Friday. It'd sure be nice if we had the capabilities of communicating, which is what we're testing. So I would
That's
say,
part of the
if
scenario.
we can waive that, Mike,
we gotta make adjustments.
if you can waive it, Mike, let's see if there's some way we can waive it. Because I think there's 3 of us up here thinking along the same lines.
Well, I mean, with the purchase price, I mean, you're not waiving your competitive bidding, you're waiving the open market. My understanding of it is it's needed for disaster preparedness because it's a communication tool. Hurricane season is 3 weeks away. If you want to do it under disaster preparedness, that's one of your selections for competitive selections. If we're to find that this is...
That's exactly where we would fall, Mike.
So contracts for and purchases of commodities and services that are made in contemplation and preparation for and/or in response to the occurrence of a natural man-made disaster where time or availability rather than price is a controlling factor exempt from this section of the code. So you make a motion finding that applies to this circumstance, so you can move forward.
I'll make such a motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion by the public? Roll call.
Councilman Rackett,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Jerome,
Yes.
Mayor Brown.
Yes. All right. Any more comments, Jim?
Thank you, gentlemen. Finding a way to move forward. Thank you all for coming. There's a lot of still here. Thank you.
Hey, Olette, just I apologize, I forgot something that was important. I've had a few residents call me to see if we as a town, and we can put this on the next agenda, but I'd like for the council to think about it. Last year, for a year, we had vegetation removal, especially before hurricane season. In other words, we had a contractor come in and people got their vegetation out to the road and got rid of a lot of it before hurricane season. I would like for the council to think about maybe doing it again this year. We took a break last year, but I believe CNC Loader we had a limit. We set a limit to what we were willing to pay the contractor to pick up any extra vegetation. And we didn't have a major problem where people started bringing in land clear and we had to pick it up. We observed it came from the residents' property, and I think it benefits the residents. And since we took a break last year, I like first thinking about doing it one more time this year. That's it.
Okay?
Put that in this agenda. You want to make that request?
All it was we basically waived the amount as a special hurricane cleanup for vegetation, you know, prior to, and do it like 4 weekends or whatever, 3 weekends ahead, to allow people to show if they have a bigger pile than normal, they'll be picked up. So,
Frank, you remember, I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor.
no,
Frank, do you remember when we did that, how many weekends or how that went down?
we tried to do it, I think, 1 weekend, but it really forced, it was hard on the residents, if I remember.
Frank Allen, Marcel Boulevard. We ended up doing it, I think we gave everybody, because we went ahead and published it, and it was published in the paper. I think we also sent out a notice and gave everybody 3 weeks to get it out there. I believe that the council back then set a limit of $15,000 to get it done, and CC Lure came under that price by, I think, about 300 or 400. And in order to keep under that, they actually picked up a couple more truckloads and all that, and just waived the fee to the town. You know, it can be done again. It's just we're going ahead and follow the procurement policy and getting that information out to the residents. And we did have a very good success. I did take pictures and did have a rather large pile.
We didn't do it more than 1 weekend, we just did, but we gave them.
We gave them 3 weeks notice, and then during the week, the truck went ahead and went out, and I think it took, about a week or so to get all it? Took us a week to get everything out. And we started over on the west side and worked our way to the east side.
It took more than 2 weekends to do it?
No, it didn't, in a week.
They had that time to pile it up.
We got down and the loads come up, and I think it was 3 or 4 loads that I wasn't gonna leave on the road there. You know, to leave that last little bit, we had everything cleaned up, and I cleaned it up underneath that sink.
Okay. We want to set that for next.
I think that's a great idea, and we've got a price set up. I mean, I don't think there's any need to say 15,000. I think we've got a price for removal or whatever, if that works for you. We use maybe the same concept.
Well,
or whatever, you know, we'll work something out.
Well,
We'll talk about it. Okay. All right, want to thank you all. Remember the festival at the Loxahatchee Groves Elementary School, and I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.